We don't want to board up the window. So I don't know where.
Okay, so we are recording and we're streaming, so we can go ahead and get started. I can call the roll whenever you're ready.
Please do.
Okay, so Leonie's not here yet, but he's expected to come. Pasquale?
Here.
All right, Frank?
Here.
Carrie?
Here.
Ryan?
Present.
Doreen? Here. And then Phoebe is not present this evening.
Welcome one and all to the March 24th UIDRB meeting. We're about to get started. I would like to swear in city staff. Do you raise your right hands, please?
Guys,
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Very good, thank you. We're going to switch around a little bit because we're going to have some conflicts that we need Keone here for. So we're going to, what is the first case we're going to hear again, Belkis?
We need to approve the minutes from last
Ah,
month.
that's correct.
And I did just want to make a quick note about the minutes that I received from KB. So on page 4, I originally had put Mr. Fleming as starting the motion. That was switched out to actually Mr. Petrozelio. So I made that correction. And then I also amended the minutes for the Lane and High project to note that Ms. Jones did not say that the project was moving in the right direction. So I did make those updates as of today, and they have been updated to Fox.
Wonderful.
So I think we just need a motion to approve the minutes. So moved.
Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fleming? Oh, he's not here. Okay, Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Abstain.
Ms. Hosauer.
Yes.
Thank you. So we can go ahead and jump. Since we're waiting on Keone, we can actually jump to case 4.
But I would, before we get started, like to welcome our newest members of the UIDRB. Sorry, we don't have a full slate of members here tonight, but welcome aboard.
Normally we have a party including lays and drinks and everything, but you know, we could do it.
It's the old location.
Yeah, I think we can jump to case 4, which is 1782 North High Street for Walgreens.
Is the applicant present?
There's some.
Yay.
It's me. We'll let you sit over here if you want. You can bring the chair. You can see it's fire choice, but.
If you need to grab a Kindle, Keone, feel free.
March 6th.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 1782 North High Street, which is a contributing commercial building built in 1909. The applicant is seeking approval to modify the exterior of the building to accommodate a new Walgreens pharmacy. Exterior modifications include fashion repair of masonry, new paint where needed to match existing, a new metal enclosure, stairs and door on the east elevation, new exterior lighting, window security film on one ground floor storefront window, and new roofing manifolds. Submitted materials include existing site photos, site plan, floor plans, elevation, stair details, door schedule, structural notes, roof framing plan, foundation details, sections, light schedule, and lighting spec sheets. And I'll just quickly go to the application. So this came before the board last month. And the primary concern with this one were the elevations, which had the window film screening. So I can scroll to those, as that's been the primary change. We still have all the same drawings as were presented last month, but as you can see noted in red, this is the change where they just have the window film on this one window versus before it was on this window, all of these second story front windows, and this side window. So all of that has been taken off and they just have, same setup, just with the one window, with that, window film. And so after review, proposal is largely consistent with the recommendations of the University District Plan. The plan recommends that existing storefronts be maintained, that street level facades include a high level of design, that clear glass be used for display windows, that dumpsters be screened, and that mechanical systems be placed on the roof. As such, staff encourages screening of the dumpsters. And although the applicant is proposing opaque window film on one window, staff recognizes that it will obscure interior coolers and freezers and is reversible. So as the proposal is largely consistent with the recommendations, staff does recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Would everyone who wishes to speak, please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
So we appreciate that. The opaque is to cover up the freezer doors on the ground floor, which I guess is been approved.
No.
No. So we want to put a mural on the window so that you can't see the freezer doors. That's where our freezer section would be. It's on the lower.
South facing?
Yeah, it's outward facing to the street. Otherwise, you're going to end up with just an aluminum textured indoor freezer wall there, which would be much more unsightly.
No other comments?
Can you roll down to the other lower elevation?
This one?
Yeah, that's the Starbucks side. Okay, we don't have it from the other side.
Oh, I believe it. This is the Starbucks side
That's the
here.
Starbucks side.
And then the other lower elevation is here. So this is the street.
Oh, okay, yeah, so
So this
so
was removed.
yeah.
This is going to be clear now.
this window would still be clear. So people walking up High Street would still see into the store. It's just the window on that little brick portion right there.
Right there.
There you go. That would be covered, which is where the freezers and the cooler units would be.
And we decided that was really the least visible window of anything on that facade. That's kind of tucked back in the corner.
It sits back pretty far.
We're trying to figure this out. So it's the west facing window in the room that's labeled passage 2, kind of set down at 10
Yeah,
feet.
there's some, it's sort of the access into the back of the freezer.
And the cooler is actually 10 foot back of the window.
Right, but that's still kind of a storage area where there's some shelving and it's not a customer.
So what do what's the film you're proposing is opaque, transparent, or translucent? What are you?
It's a mural.
It's the mural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are sticking with a mural like we had presented last time, so I think I actually don't know if some light will come through it or not.
I would say it's probably opaque
Okay, yeah.
because it's just a mess back there. It's like it's the back room area.
Well, you could do, you can't, you're printing something on it, it's gonna say something.
But yes, sir.
What's the graphic?
It's a mural. It's a mural that would have to get approved.
It's a mural.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Okay. Can we ask that you make it translucent?
Well, then you'd still be able to see the mess of the back room
No, that's not what translucent means.
with the lights on behind it.
It's, translucent just means that you will see light through it, like it were a sign in a way.
Yeah,
You will not see anything beyond illumination.
if you think of like a standard window film, they're often used to maintain privacy in offices. It's,
Right.
it's sort of, it's milky white, you can't see through it, but it still lets light through.
Right.
I think I think basically we're trying to get at, we're trying to meet you halfway. We get that, there's no good reason to see in there. And we're trying to maintain a certain amount of transparency, because the worst thing for a street is just opacity and darkness. And
It's not unreasonable. think that we could probably accommodate that.
Yeah, and it's actually gonna give you more presence, honestly, than if it were, non-lint. Can you talk to us about your pharmacy, please, and how you will control the west light in your pharmacy? I mean, I know that we complained last time that you were covering it up, and now I'm asking, how are you gonna deal with the sun?
So that's going to be a problem because we've tried to rework the pharmacy in the upper level of that store. The stairs are at the rear, so is the elevator. And it, for security purposes, we like the pharmacy to look out on the whole length of the store. So the west side facing the sun is actually where the pharmacy would be.
Right,
Currently, and from what I understand, last time it was, we had proposed some kind of window covering. But I think that we could probably tint the glass. Would that work?
well, I think you,
If you had roller shades called for, I think we were talking roller shades.
Like these kind?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, last time you were putting an opaque film, correct?
And we've removed that and we've removed the wall that was immediately behind the window. So you will now see into the working guts of the pharmacy.
Right.
But to control the light, is that maybe an issue for the medics? Yeah, we're talking.
These
some
are
sort
a
of
bit
shade.
more opaque than I would hope for. But, you know, they make all percentages
Yeah.
of that.
And we are facing due west,
Yeah.
so that's going to
We
be,
know where you are.
yeah, it's going to be an issue, but yeah, that would probably be a good solution with roller lines.
Talk to us about your signage.
Late sign?
That's
Approve the
actually
one
the next
side.
application, so we should.
Oh, it's
have
another
that.
application?
Yeah, it's a separate.
Okay, so never mind.
But we can jump right to that one when we're done voting on this one.
Yeah. So how about we make a motion to approve the application with the following condition that the west-facing recessed ground floor window graphic be translucent to allow light to be transmitted, but no view into the store. And that the second-story windows into the pharmacy be unobstructed with anything other than solar roll shades that will allow transparency in the evening, and such that we will be able to see the pharmacy when it's dark out. And of course, all the shades have to be lowered at the same height and
We'll get a rule.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we can't, part of the condition can't be about the roller shades, but we can make the condition about having a level of transparency into the second floor window.
That's fair.
Okay,
Okay, you're saying it's the method that we cannot talk about because
Right.
it's inside, is that why?
exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that
And it's
trans,
not visible on a floor plan typically, so we have to make sure that it's something that's noted in the drawings.
okay, then let's revise it to say that the second floor windows into the pharmacy, transparency
Beautiful,
will be maintained in
Yeah.
the second floor windows of the pharmacy.
perfect.
That's it.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Question.
Yep.
Lucas, could you put up the existing facade?
Yeah.
All the wood is remaining and the front doors are remaining, or are you replacing that?
So that's steel, structural steel on the outside between the windows, and the doors are actually wood.
Yeah, that's what, I'm sorry. I missed
Yeah.
Right.
I believe,
We're replacing the doors.
Yeah.
That's in the application. We're
So,
putting
but you're going to leave the rusted,
we're keeping all of the other storefront. We're just replacing the pair of doors with a new aluminum pair.
And it's going to stay rusty steel?
We're-
It will not be painted red.
It will not be painted red.
we don't want to be.
No. I forget what our note on our drawing says, honestly, it's.
yeah,
we
I
are-
missed it, that's why I was.
Yeah.
Glad you brought it up, Pasquale. We were so worried about the windows, we weren't thinking about that. So what, we have to answer us. We need to know what the answer is.
Well, I know, I want to see what the note on our drawings said.
4113.
It said we would
I think we're.
touch up and repaint,
Yeah,
touch the paint, retouch the paint and or point.
Here,
Paint to match.
Yeah, it's paint to match, and I just don't know how you paint to match the rusty metal is. Yeah.
Okay, then I need to amend my motion.
Okay.
What do we want there, guys?
No, that,
You want it to stay the same?
sure,
As well?
that's fine. I just wanted to know what they.
All right, and right now, do we have a sense of what it is? It's just, it's not Corten, is it?
No, it's not Corten.
It's
It's some
just-
sort of kind of distressed finish.
It's just,
It appears to be steel.
Yeah, it is steel. It is steel, but I don't,
It's, not being the guys, it's structural steel, but it had something on it, but it has patina.
all right, I got it. All right, if we could amend it to add that the exposed structural steel on the facade finish will remain as is, other than maintenance.
Can I get a second to that amendment?
Second.
Sorry, who was that?
It needs to
Keone
be
was second.
Keone, actually, because
Second, who's the word?
I'll call the roll then. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Yes.
Ms. Sauer. Yes. Thank you. Okay, should we jump to the sign application?
Absolutely.
Can you pull that one up? So this is at the same location, and the applicant is seeking approval for a new projecting sign. The sign will be 4 square feet total with a 3-inch deep non-illuminated white blade sign with a 1-inch thick red routed graphic, and it'll be stud mounted to each sign of the sign face. And then the sign itself will hang from a bracket that'll be mounted to the brick exterior wall at 10 feet above grade. And the submitted materials include a site plan, elevation, perspective drawing, and material details. So if you look at those, this is the location of the sign. I wanted to note that sign A1 has already been approved and the CO has been issued for that, so we're focusing on sign B. This is the location, so sign B here on the elevation, and then you can see it there hanging in the rendering. And then this is the material details of the sign, so you can see the thickness, the size, and how it will look. And so based on that, the proposal is consistent with the recommendations in the University District Plan. The plan recommends projecting pedestrian-oriented signs in the university area and that they be proportional to the building, located above the storefront display windows or transoms and below the second-story window sills. So as the proposal is consistent with plan recommendations, staff does recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
I think that we changed the color. I think that was the issue last time.
actually, last time we had a much larger vertically oriented, internally illuminated box sign. So we ditched that, just did a very simple, non-illuminated, this will allow people walking up and down the sidewalk, just to have a little bit of an identifier consistent with other buildings along the street. So much more simple, much more tasteful than what was there before. We also lowered it so that it's just above the 10-foot.
I move we approve the sign as submitted, the blade sign as submitted.
Seconded.
Okay. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
Yes,
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Sauer. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Now we're gonna go back.
Yes, get back in order.
Yep. So we're gonna go to 1503 Hunter Avenue. Go back. Thank you.
Good to see everyone this evening.
Hello?
Happy that we have forum for us.
Yes. All right, so 1501 to 1511, should say, wait, Sorry, I'm a little, I'm on the second. There we go. All right, so this is 1445 Neal Avenue, which is a contributing apartment structure, which was originally two single-family homes built in 1908. The applicant is seeking conceptual feedback to construct an addition to the existing building on the west elevation, as well as a recommendation on variances to accompany the work. The project will increase the number of dwelling units from 10 to 13, increase FAR to 0.91, reconfigure the parking area, and remove and rebuild the Neal Avenue entry. The existing brick will be cleaned, restored, and tuck pointed. The new addition will match the existing roof slope and will have fiber cement siding, party board. On the east elevation, the applicant is proposing to convert an existing arched window into a wood patio doors, update the main entry, and add a canopy. Lastly, the applicant is proposing to replace all existing non-original windows on all elevations. Rear landscaping and exterior lighting materials will be part of the final design, but have not been finalized yet. So the applicant came before the board in February, where the board appreciated the design updates and stated that a landscape plan will be needed for a future motion on the design. And in response to board comments from January, when they originally came, the applicant chose a historic accurate design for the front building connector, added a third story to the building connector, extruded the front entrance canopy, scaled the new windows on the north and south elevations to single versus paired windows, and maintained a window on the south elevation in lieu of infilling it. A roof plan, color elevations, and renderings were also provided. And so for this work, the applicant is seeking the following recommendations for the following filed zoning variances. And that's to increase lot coverage from 40% to 45%, to reduce the number of required parking spaces from 20 to 12, to increase the maximum calculated floor area from 10,200 square feet to 16,076 square feet, to increase the maximum FAR from 0.8 to 0.91, and then to reduce the total side yards from 16 feet to 11, and to reduce the minimum north side yard from 5 foot to 1 foot. Oh, sorry, there's two more. And then not to provide two interior parking lot trees within and internal to the 12 space parking lot, and then to permit the existing driveway from Neal Avenue. And then their submittal includes existing site photos and existing and proposed site plan, floor plans, roof plans, elevations, renderings, and a variance list. And then just to quickly look, a lot of this is the same from last time, but I'll kind of end it on the elevations. So that's the front elevation, that's the north elevation, which is the side, the rear elevation, and then the other side. And so after review, the proposal is largely consistent with the recommendations of the plan. The plan recommends a site for medium intensity residential use, which is an FAR of 0.6, preservation of existing contributing buildings, and double stacked parking spaces. The plan states that the scale and proportion of additions be compatible with those of the contributing buildings, that the contrast between old and new be reflected with contemporary design and materials, and that additions should not obscure or destroy existing significant building features or materials. And furthermore, the plan recommends that original architectural features be maintained, that trash recycling be screened, and that bicycle parking be provided. So as the proposal generally preserves and or enhances the contributing building and is compatible with the existing scale of the contributing building, staff is generally supportive. And then we do request the following design changes, and that all replacement windows on the original structure be a window type from the UIDRB approved window list, that the arch window on the east elevation remain a window in lieu of new patio doors, and then to consider a contrasting material such as board and batten for replacement of the existing connector, as brick material could be confused for original design. And staff notes that exterior lighting and material cut sheets will be needed for review upon a future request for action on the design. But as the proposal is largely consistent with plan recommendations and some variances legitimize the existing non-conforming conditions of the site, staff does support the proposed variances. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume the applicant would like some measure of embellishment.
She's very thorough.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you so much.
To clarify, Belkis, the 8th variance, the drive from Neal Avenue is no longer applicable.
Oh, okay.
We got feedback from city traffic department and they wanted us to remove it, so it's been removed.
I noticed that on the plan, yeah.
So this project, as you've seen before, today I think we should split it into two parts because we want to get variance endorsements. But we also want to essentially get to the point where the design is at a point where we can really start to push forward with more detail, more construction documents within our office. Because we kind of lost a month with not having a quorum last month. I'm hoping for approval this month, but everything got pushed back. So to keep the construction timeline, if we could essentially get everyone's feedback to say, yes, this is the design with maybe a few tweaks here and there and further detail, then hopefully next month we can get full approval if we can't get it today.
Yeah, I mean, Bradley, just to be consistent, what we've asked of the applicants in order to get approvals to provide immunities, wall sections and significant details.
Mhm.
So I think while you're here a lot and we generally trust you, in fairness, we have to ask of you what we ask of everyone else.
Mhm.
So I think we'll provide comments, but you'll probably have to come back next month.
Right, so I guess my point is, I just don't want to come back next month and have gigantic design changes proposed and have to wait another month. So any good feedback we can get today as far as any major changes or major issues the board may have is appreciated.
Well, let's stick with the variances, because that's
Yeah.
what's before us, correct?
Yes.
Um,
Oh, so today is vote for support on variance. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, well, the tree thing.
Yeah, I don't want to forego the trees completely, so if you can't put them there, you gotta put them somewhere on the site.
Yeah, agreed.
They need a home.
You can take them out of the parking lot, but add 2 more trees to the project.
We do have trees, but the variances, so the parking lot requirements in the zoning code say the trees need to be internal to.
So we understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're saying is we support you, we'll support you on variance, but we want to see the trees elsewhere on the property. Right. So like looking at your site plan, seems like you got room sort of adjacent to the parking lot for trees.
Bilkis, can you be clear about the density variances? They're showing a need for variances, but you're saying that the plan supports a higher, so that's the FAR 0.6,
0.6.
and existing is 4, what was it, 0.4 or something?
Let's see. They're increasing the FAR from 0.8 to 0.91.
Oh,
So the way this exists already, it's over the recommended FAR of 0.6. And then they just want to increase that further by
0.11.
0.11 essentially. So it's not a significant increase from what is currently built there right now.
And you need to have it in order to make it all work?
Mhm.
Not yes, okay.
And a lot of the variances are because the site is non-conforming as it's built right now. And so a lot of the variances are to legitimize, the non-conformance of this, to conform the site, essentially.
The 12 parking spaces that we're proposing match the number of parking spaces that currently exist on the site.
I mean, I think Frank and I are okay with it, and you are with trees, Ryan, anything? Okay, all right, so
How adding all of that building only adds 0.1 to the FAR. Doesn't that seem?
Well, you're demoing, aren't you?
Mhm.
that's fair.
Yeah, there's
So
some
this
chunks on the back that we're
They're
getting.
now,
I mean, isn't that new dash the whole new
Mhm.
covered? That same,
It does seem to be.
It may have to do with the fact that there's more square footage when you go vertically on the original than there is what they're adding. So you did all the calculations and we can believe you, correct?
Well, so I think, just for clarity, we're allowed a 0.8 FAR. We're proposing a
right, because you're
0.91.
conserving the building, that's,
Yeah,
you get a bonus.
I have no idea what the existing FAR.
Okay, so it's not how you characterized it. It's
Right.
not, it's not.
well, that makes more
Right.
sense.
That's a good catch.
Believe me. So 0.8 is allowed, okay, so we're only 0.1 above.
Got
not 0.3, so that makes
Okay.
Makes sense. I guess I move to support the variances with the caveat that the 2 trees that will not be provided internal to the parking lot be provided elsewhere on the property.
It's no problem.
Do you have a second?
Is there a second?
Ryan seconded that.
Ah,
Okay.
here.
All right, so Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Petrosilio,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
So those variances passed. And then did we need a comment? Do you need any more comments on the architecture piece?
Well, since this is Ryan's first look at it, if you have any comments on the building, the massing, materials, anything like that, if any other board members have any.
Without having the benefit of hearing what was before, I mean, generally, I don't have any issues with what's there. I think the front elevation, which is most important to me, I mean, is consistent what's there.
I'd like to focus on the staff's comments, actually. I understand the issue having to do with dissimilar materials and potentially dissimilar materials, potentially dissimilar colors and matching and all that kind of stuff. And I know that you know that. So I would tell you that when you come back, is there any way for you to be able to be more clear about what you're going to need to do and make this all work? It's clear that you can make it a different material and it could probably work, right? It's not clear whether you can make the brick work. So is there any way for you to do that?
We have tried to power wash the existing brick so that we could tuck point it and see what the
Yeah.
two bricks look like. The problem is that when we did that, everything just bled right through to the interior of the building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a historic preservation person, but one of my colleagues is, and generally speaking, power washing existing brick is not necessarily.
No, it didn't go well. So we looked into some other options like walnut blasting and all these other dry ice blasting, things like that. The goal was once the building was vacated, we were going to do our demolition and then we could power wash it so that we're not destroying somebody's apartment in the process.
So, I mean, I think Frank's got a point that, this shows the brick of the central tower matching the side buildings, but the chances that you're gonna be able to do that are slim to none, probably. Because like, even if you get all the damn paint off the existing brick, finding a brick that matches the existing brick is gonna be tough. So I think if I'm sort of reading Frank's mind here, I'd say, consider doing something maybe that contrasts,
Yeah.
which is kind of the staff comment anyway. Doesn't need to be board and batten, it could just be a different
I
brick.
think at the last meeting, we proposed like either dark gray or a black brick.
Well, in many ways, we don't care what you propose, just propose something, be specific though, don't just,
Right.
and
That's what I'm
another way to
proposing.
solve the problem, they won't miss one brick. Just chisel a brick out of each building
Okay.
and clean the brick off and say, okay, these are the 2, and here's the third one in the middle that we see mitigates the gap between these 2.
Okay.
Something like that. I mean, just something so that you've thought about it, there's an answer, and we can move forward. And we all know that it's probably going to look weird anyway, so. Right.
I think I'm thinking about it a little bit, there is some sort of chemical product I think my colleague uses. You slather it on the paint and then it sets and it allows you to pull the paint off the brick.
Correct, and now with warmer weather, because that's a key to any kind of paint stripper is temperature.
Are
So,
you familiar with that product?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, other than that, I think the only other significant staff comment was the going from an arched window in the front to a door, which they didn't love. Is that just because you got a porch out front?
Yes.
Yeah, just outdoor space for our
Yeah.
residents.
I would rather see you have a horizontal and have a half round
Oh,
and
no.
have square doors. I don't like the pointed doors. And
That would be preferred for us.
they're never gonna
Thank you.
be right, and they're never gonna close properly. Now, I will tell you that the arched window on the right doesn't look right. And I think the frame is too thin or something, so I don't know if that's your drawing or if that's what exists or whatever, but that looks like a hole in the brick. It doesn't look like a window.
On the top arch.
Yes,
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, which
all the way to the right.
The right side.
Right, first one.
See, now you have
Yeah.
weight, you'll notice on your patio doors, you have weight around the edges. And when you put a horizontal bar in there and you leave the weight, it'll look fine. But on the right, it looks a little flimsy to me. So I don't know if that's an existing situation or a new window or what.
Yeah, we're replacing all the windows, but yeah, that's,
I mean, that one's set in sort of pretty elaborate trim. By replacing the windows, you just remove the glass. You're gonna keep the columns and the header. Okay,
Yeah, see, there's a lot more there. There's frame and then there's sash. Here, you're just showing frame. So we want to see frame and sash.
what was the other staff comment, Belkis? I think you had 3.
Window.
Let's go back.
Oh,
and see
we're
what
off
they
the
said.
approved list.
Oh,
Or
yeah, you
windows,
see.
or windows you bring us to approve.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the comment side, I mean, I remember this one, I guess, 2 months ago, Brad, and I think it's clean, it works. It seems, the comments I think that were made the first time around about the differentiation between front and back, it all makes sense. I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, do your drawings, come back with the stuff you need to do, and I think you're in good shape.
sounds good.
Next.
And then you two are staying for Hunter. All right, so I'll move to 1503 Hunter. So the entire address, which is 1501 to 1511 Hunter Avenue, is a contributing brick apartment structure built in 1902. The applicant is seeking both board approval to construct second floor additions over the 2 northern bump outs of the west elevation, as well as a recommendation and several variances to accompany the work. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to remove and rebuild front porch foundations with split face CMU and lattice, while maintaining the existing columns and roof structures, infilling the arch windows with fixed windows, adding dental trim at the top of the porches, replacing the front doors with half-light doors, and replacing the gutters and downspouts. All existing vinyl windows are proposed to be replaced with new vinyl windows, which will be sized to fit the original opening. And the basement window openings are proposed to be filled with glass block. Exterior material specifications will be included and presented at a later date when it's finalized, which actually is today. And then to accompany the work, we have some variances. So to increase the permitted lot coverage from 40% to 54%, to reduce the parking from 7 spaces to 0, to reduce the total side yard from 15.5 feet to 5.5 feet, to reduce the north and south side yards from 5 feet to 4 foot 5 inches and 1 inch, and then to reduce the total required minimum rear yard from 25% to 21%. And again, a lot of these are to conform.
Yeah, so Belkis, it appears that these are to bring it into conformance with the existing conditions.
Exactly, yeah. And so the applicant last came to the board last month, whereby the board recommended that the porch post piers be simplified and to use split face block for the front porch foundation. The board also recommended single pane or possibly double hung windows for the 3rd story dormers. And then in response to the board feedback, the applicant simplified the front porch columns, used split face BMU block for the porch foundation, and updated the 3rd story dormer windows to single panes. And then the submittal includes sandboard maps, existing site photos, a site plan, floor plans, elevations, porch section, addition section, variance list, and material cut sheets. And again, most of us have seen these drawings, but in going to the elevations, here you can see the difference in the windows up here in the dormers. The porch columns are fairly simple in design, and then really this side, no, I'm sorry, this other side. This is where we were talking about that split face CMU and how it met the grade. So they updated that and the materiality of that. So based on this review, the proposal is largely consistent with the recommendations of the University District Plan. The plan recommends a site for high-intensity residential use and places priority on the preservation of existing contributing buildings. The plan states that the scale and proportion of additions be compatible with those of the contributing building, that the contrast between old and new be reflective of contemporary design and materials, and that addition should not obscure or destroy existing significant building features or materials. Furthermore, the plan recommends that original architectural features be maintained, that windows and doors that are no longer used should be maintained and left in place, and that replacement doors and windows should fit the entire opening with no filler or additional framing. As the variances legitimize the existing non-conforming conditions of the site, staff recommends support of the proposed variance recommendation. And as the proposal preserves the contributing building and the addition is in scale with the existing building, staff recommends approval for the design. Thank you.
Thank you. And are you here seeking approval today?
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like you've got the drawings. So
It's two of them, it's two votes,
Yeah,
variance.
so it'll be two motions, one for the variances and then the second one will be for the design.
should we get the variances in total?
I think we should.
I move to support the variances as stated.
Second,
So Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
and Mr. Semansky.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tell us about the changes, Bradley, please.
Sure. So on the Hunter Avenue side, actually KV had a really good point of how the previous porch design didn't really meet the ground very well in all conditions. So I went through and simplified foundation to just be split face. And I have bump outs below the columns that turn the corners and meet the grade at the alley side much better. And then the windows on the faux dormers at the top, they were double hung last time and kind of squat. So we removed the center mullion and just made them a single pane and we fixed. Those are pretty much the only changes from last.
So are all the attic story windows, windows or what?
Yeah, those will be windows, but there's nothing up there. It's just
Inaccessible.
Okay, and the downlooms are window, are into the space or into the attic?
attic.
Can you go to the side view? I don't know what elevation it is. Yeah, that one. So the glass block in the basement, what is, can you zoom in a little bit, Elvis, please? What is what's the top, what's below the arch? What is that?
That'll just be brick metal to match the.
It'll be what?
Brick metal to match the color of the other windows on the facade.
Okay.
We don't think we have to finish. I mean, it's fine.
Hey, Ryan, make a motion.
Submitted.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Sorry, who was that?
Kelly. Kelly seconded.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Semansky. Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys.
Is that it? Are we
No,
done?
sorry.
Oh, my God.
Can't get around this yet.
Get you out the door. One is on Summit, that's right. Okay, so 1520 Summit Street is a contributing brick, single-family home built in 1900. The applicant is seeking approval for exterior building updates and to construct a 3-story rear addition to convert the structure from a single-unit home into a duplex. The plans include new siding, roof, wood front door, aluminum-clad windows on the existing structure, which would replace vinyl windows, and siding, as well as a reconfigured parking area with 3 stacked spaces for 6 spaces total. The new rear addition will consist of hardy siding and vinyl windows with a wood porch entry on a CMU and concrete foundation. New exterior finishes will be included and presented at a later date once finalized. So to accompany the above work, the applicant is also seeking a recommendation for the following variances, so we would need a motion and vote on this. To not provide parking lot screening, to increase the maximum lot coverage from 25 to 42%, to increase the maximum FAR from 0.4 to 0.54, to reduce the total side yards from 6.02 feet to 5 feet, and to reduce the minimum side yards from 5 feet to 2 feet 5 inches. The applicant came before the board at the February meeting where the board expressed concerns about the rear lot coverage and recommended that the rear addition match the depth and footprint of nearby homes. Furthermore, the board stated that they would be more in favor of a parking variance to retain more green space or rear yard. And so in response to board comments, the applicant shortened the length of the rear addition to match surrounding footprints and to retain rear green space, but increased the height of the addition by 1 story and dormered the existing roof to account for the loss in depth. So the submittal includes a site plan, floor plans, elevations, existing site photos, material cut sheets, and a variance list. And so to go through this one, this is the proposed site plan. So this is the backyard. You see the parking here, rear yard, and then in this gray color is the addition. So this is shorter than what it used to be. And then we have the first floor plan, second floor plan, and then proposed attic plan. So you can kind of see how they dormered out the sides there. And then this is the west elevation, so facing front, so you can see those little dormers up there. The proposed south elevation, so you can see how the rear is shorter than what it once was. Proposed east elevation, so this is the rear, and then the proposed north elevation. And then here we have a wall section, building section, another wall section here, and then this is what it looks like today. So that's the back, sides, and then this variance list. And if you need, I can bring up the one from last month. I know it can be tricky to remember in your mind. But after review, the proposal is largely consistent with the guidelines of the University District Plan. The plan recommends a site for low intensity residential use, which places priority on the preservation of existing contributing buildings and recommends a max FAR of 0.4, a minimum of 20% of the total lot area to be preserved as landscaped open space behind the principal structure, and a max of 4 single stack parking spaces. The plan states that character defining features of historic buildings be maintained and that parking be located to the rear or side of buildings. Furthermore, the plan recommends that the scale and proportion of additions be compatible with those of the contributing building, that the contrast between old and new be reflected with contemporary design and materials, that additions not obscure or destroy existing significant building features, and that replacement doors and windows fit the entire opening with no filler or additional framing. So as the proposal preserves a contributing building and the addition is in scale with the existing building, staff is generally supportive of the variance recommendation, but requests that 4 parking spaces be provided in lieu of 6 to ensure consistency with the plan. A recommended layout is to have 3 single stack spaces across with 1 double stack space to maximize the usable green space. Staff is generally supportive of the conceptual design and requests the following design update, and that's to have all the replacement windows, be it the window type from the approved window list, for the contributing part of the structure. And overall, we support recommendation for the variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments?
I mean, as far as the variances are concerned, no.
Okay. Any comment among board members regarding variances?
Because you've essentially made it no deeper than your neighbor.
Correct.
What about the bulk, though? I mean, those are enormous. To call them dormers is it's a bit of a semantic variable issue here. We see the, so those, can we see the streetscape? Can we see the,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
setback.
Take me to the wrong house.
Oh, no, it's the other way.
Yeah, that's the-
Google Maps takes you to the wrong house.
This one.
It's the third house. Yeah.
I mean,
The adjacent buildings have pretty similar sized dormers that actually face Summit. Ours would be set back quite a ways. Those are smaller, but on the same side of the street there,
Which one's the building?
That one.
that one.
I would zoom out at 10.
Let's go down the street, please.
Oh, yeah.
Left or right? No, well, no, sideways,
Oh,
if you can.
so letting me go over to the side.
There you go, right there, stop. Please.
And it's change. You know, the house is simply dormers, basically, it's of course. So it's a little different.
You think it'd be helpful? How low can you go? Can you drop it at all? Drop them at all?
They're bedrooms right now, and it gets kind of tight in there if we drop them. I'm trying to,
Give me a dimension.
let me look at.
Don't give me kind of tight.
Yeah, so right now their width is 9.6, and part of that is the same ceiling.
It's the height I'm asking.
Right, well, if we bring the height down, the width has to come in too,
Why?
because then it gets kind of awkward at scale and the windows won't quite fit, so bring that down, bring the windows in, so that the eave height essentially stays the same.
All I'm asking is if you could drop the roof down, and yes, you would have to make maybe one window, not two. Just asking, and what the ceiling height would be, especially if you opened it up to the gable, right?
Yeah, I would say,
Full ceiling height. It's 9'6", we lose, what, 2 feet on each side.
I would say more than 50% of the room would be between the 5-foot knee wall and the 7-foot ceiling. It's
I think by code you're allowed that, right? What is,
50% is the minimum, or minimum maximum. You can't have more than 50% of the attic space be between the 5-foot and the 7-foot. And it gets to be kind of an awkward bedroom.
Trying to get away from the old.
So the knee wall is how high, the way you have it drawn?
5 feet.
Knee wall is 5 feet. Yeah, well. I mean,
I think the thing we're struggling with is if you look at the image of the street, the dormers are fundamentally, the adjacent buildings are fundamentally subservient to the primary roof line. And so, you know, it reads, they're a little different, they're hips, but they read as hips with dormers. And the thing you're doing is, you know, you're calling it a dormer, but it basically, you've now got like cruciform gable rather than a dormer. And so I think what Frank's at, which sort of seems to me a reasonable compromise, is if you can drop the ridge of the dormer a little bit, the dormer is subservient to the gable.
so it doesn't break the ridge.
Gotcha.
Now, what about changing the pitch? I mean, I know that that's heresy, but let's look at the side elevation again. Would it be the end of the world? What is that, 8 or 12?
Does it
What is-
match the other-
What is the pitch?
It's
I mean,
9.12.
you could put it.
9.
What about a shed?
You could put a shed dormer in, or you could go, I think you could lower the pitch. I don't think it would matter that
I'd
much.
rather have a shed in there anyway.
You want a shed?
If the shed is reasonable, that's much better.
Well, you gotta keep the spring of it off the ridge,
Go to,
like down a foot.
please go back to the street view. Sorry to keep asking. I think I'd be okay with the shed.
It would fall back better. wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why'd you propose the gable? You were second guessing us.
That's not it.
Thank you for saying it, so I didn't have to say that.
Well, it's your job to second guess us, so I said that'd be embarrassing.
I mean, I think it's reasonable because I think fundamentally what I mean, it's a nice house, right? It's a clean two-story gable. It's got a kind of nice clean form. And I think what you really want to do is, it's fine to put a dormer on there to give more space. And more rent. But you want to keep it sort of secondary to the primary form. And I think a shed dormer will do that. It'll get you more ceiling space. And honestly, it's going to be cheap.
And it's gonna be cheaper, surely cheaper. Are we doing this? Are we doing a final on this one?
I was hoping to get a final, yes.
Well, we just did the variance though, right?
Yes.
So you still gotta go through the variance process.
Yeah, well, we're already in the middle of variance process.
So you need the variances approved.
They're looking for approval on the variances and then also a second motion and approval for the design.
Right. Well, I think what Frank is saying is if we vote in support of the variances, they still got to go before the full BZA or whomever.
Right.
And so it's not like they can start building anyway.
No, they have to go for permitting and all that. Yep.
So, but I think it also means they can come back next month with the shed
With the
dormers.
shed design. Yeah, so you could make that a staff approvable condition, or you could make that a condition whereby they have to come back for review and approval of the board for that.
I mean, it's going to take you a month to get the variances processed anyway, right?
We're already on the agenda for the BZA, but it's just been delayed until we get endorsements from.
Understood.
So,
And I think we're going to give you an endorsement on the variances, but when are you on the agenda?
I want to say it's either right around the time of the next meeting or like the week before.
All right, so this is kind of my thinking. We vote on the variances, which I think you've got support on. We ask you to come back in a month with the shed dormer design, and you can do CDs because we're not going to be that fussy about it. And we'll give you approval on the design then. But it's going to take you 3 or 4 weeks to get through BZA anyway. So giving you approval on the design wouldn't necessarily speed up the process.
Right, the variances are what's correct.
Perfect.
Let's do the variances.
Yeah.
I move we support the variances for this application.
Seconded.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, get out of here.
And then
We look forward to seeing you next month.
we'll need a motion though for the design, so staff recommends that the board motion to continue the application.
I move to continue the application.
Second.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozelio,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Would you tell our friends to come back in, please, when you?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
$285, 1965, for 2 Yakashino captain's chairs and 4 of those 3-legged chairs.
How much?
$285.
That sounds about right. I think the tables are, back in the day, went for like few thousand, and maybe they're now worth 60 to.
Sure. Well, but see, first I thought, oh, that's some huge amount, but then I realized that's how much my high school tuition was, the most expensive Catholic I paid through a year. Yeah. Catholic school tuition, high school, was $15,000 to $20,000, which is about how much those pieces are worth today.
Now it's this is better. It's normal. So it looks like we're on 21 East Arcadia.
So it's funny you say something. It was in the 800.
Well, you do it because it was the most.
We're back on.
All right, so 21 East Arcadia Avenue consists of 2 improving buildings, originally built in the 1940s as a parking lot and car barn for the Columbus streetcar system, and most recently served as an AEP utility building. In September 2017, the board recommended to support the rezoning of the property from C4 to R2F and several council variances. In March 2019, the board reviewed a different application with a different applicant for the exterior modifications, which was eventually tabled due to questions about locating parking between the building and the right-of-way. Today, the current applicant, which is different from before, is seeking conceptual feedback to renovate the existing site and buildings. The east building will serve as a 3-bed, 2-bath home, and the west building will serve as a 5-bed, 6-bath guest house with an FAR of 0.54. Major aspects of the renovation include a 1-story addition to the east building, window replacements to fit the original window openings using a window type from the UIDRB approved window list, new openings for windows and doors, new exterior lighting, new shade trees, the installation of pavement for 4 parking spots off of an existing East Arcadia curb cut, new aluminum fencing in the front, and a new 6-foot, I think it's 8-foot privacy fence in the rear. And to accompany the work, the applicant is seeking recommendations for the following filed zoning variances, so this will need a motion today. And that's to have 2 single-unit dwellings on the same lot, to have 4 parking spaces and the maneuvering area to be located between the principal building and the right-of-way. And then to have, maintain the existing building facade of the western building with 0% window glass and include window glass on the building facade of the eastern building totaling less than 60%. And then no landscaping and screening for the on-site parking spaces and an 8-foot tall fence along Brow Alley. And then 4 parking spaces in the new ring to be located between the principal building and the street right-of-way. And then maintaining the lot area of 10,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit. A reduced maximum side yard of 7.6% of the width for 6 feet. And then maintaining a minimum side yard of 2.5 feet along the east property line and 3.5 feet along the western property line for the existing buildings. And then maintaining no rear yard for either dwelling. So the applicant came before the board at the January 2022 meeting where the board stated that although supportive of an addition, the design seemed inconsistent with the existing buildings. Some board members expressed hesitation with the 4 parking spaces and noted that the parking area should resemble a courtyard more than a parking lot. In response, the applicant redesigned the addition with clean lines and more glass. The applicant also added permeable hardscape and programming details to turn the parking area into a flex space for outdoor activities or parking. And the submittal includes existing site photos, site plan, elevations, renderings, variance list, material selection. So to go to their drawings here. Here we have the site plan. So you'll see the permeable pavers where the parking flex area would be. You see that the addition has changed to this envelope right here. And then we have existing site photos that we've seen before. Those are interior, so those are new. Here you have the, I think it's the hardscape, or I'm sorry, the landscape plan. So you can see that screening has been included to hide the parking area. Here you have the hardscape plan, more landscape plan. Design elements and materials, so these seem to be sort of inspiration photos. And then you have the elevation. So this is the new addition here, which is a little bit cleaner, more contemporary in design with more glass. You have the east elevation showing the new addition, the west elevation, and then you have the first floor plan, second floor plan, and the south elevation. East elevation, this is for the secondary building, west elevation, and then the first floor plan, second floor plan, and then here's some rendering. So that's the new addition there. And then this is the view from the street, so you can know all of the landscaping and the fencing, the flex space. Another shot of that. And then the rest are just variances and then all of their material selections. So we can go to those pages, as needed. But after review, the proposal is largely consistent with the guidelines of the University District Plan. The plan recommends a site for neighborhood mixed use, which places priority on the preservation of existing contributing buildings and recommends multifamily uses, a max FAR of 0.5 and parking at a rate of 0.75 spaces per bed. The plan states that the character defining features of historic buildings be maintained, that the primary facade of buildings address the street, that landscaping be provided in the front setback, parking be located to the rear or side of buildings, and that parking adjacent to the right-of-way be screened. So as the proposal preserves the contributing buildings, preserves original architecture features, and provides new trees and landscaping in the front setback, staff recommends support for the proposed variance recommendation and approval of the proposed design. Although staff does not typically support parking between the primary building and the right-of-way, staff supports the location of this site's parking as the preservation of the existing contributing structures is a mitigating factor. So we support recommendation for the variances and we support approval for the design as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you please raise your right hands? Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
My name is Kyle Green. I'm with Gunzelman Architecture and Interiors.
I'm Rachel Harkle-Rhoda. I'm with MKSK.
I think it's probably beneficial to walk through some of the design changes in the landscape drawings that we produced. First, I wanted to touch on the variances quickly. The reason why we have 9 variances this time, and last time we talked about one, was by changing that one variance, which was previously approved at 2 parking spaces in front of the building, and we're requesting 4. We're resubmitting a new site plan, and we basically have to go through all of the previously approved variances as well that were already approved in 2017. So a lot of them, 8 out of the 9 were already approved in 2017. Just to be clear, now that we came back with a million variances. So yeah, the one variance for the 4 parking spaces in front of the building, I think we'll address that as we go through some of the design changes in the landscape plan. Just to talk about the addition, we made a lot of changes to it based on the comments that we received in January from this commission, and we've reduced the footprint a little bit and pushed it back. We've obviously added a lot more floor-to-ceiling windows, and we've removed previously we had the entry to the building along this addition. We removed that and put the entry back to the existing entry of the original building. We've also, the material of the addition, as well as the front canopy, it would be a black break metal panel. So it's more industrial feel. Previous our old design, we had sort of a more vertical siding, and we agree with the commission's comments that we were trying to bring more horizontality into the addition. So we've added some cleaner lines and simpler horizontal trim. The addition, we've also have a roof deck on the addition portion that will be accessed through existing window openings. We'll enlarge them to the floor to get doors, but on the second floor, we'll have a horizontal black metal railing. As I mentioned, we have the canopy in the front that will sort of mimic the same profile and material and color as the addition. New windows in all the existing openings, and even if you go back to that, here, those tall skinny windows on the first floor, those have been since bricked over on the inside, so we'll be restoring those. And then on the second building as well, just restoring the original openings with that have been previously bricked over, but no addition on this building. So to talk about the site a little bit, we we wanted to provide a sort of layers of screening. And I think Rachel's done a great job in sort of turning the front space where we would potentially have cars parked into something that doesn't feel anything like a parking lot. We're sort of focusing on these being flexible spaces. If you have one or two cars there, it doesn't, you can bring out furniture and entertain, and it doesn't feel like you're in a parking lot at all. I'll let you want to touch on some of the pavement or the pavers.
Yeah, sure.
Screening.
Yeah, so both of the flexible spaces, yeah, we're looking at using a concrete paver that's a permeable paver for those areas. So that way, and then also, I guess I should say, up the alley, we call it the alley down the middle, that's also being proposed as permeable at this time. Two different types of permeable pavers, just for scale differentiation and defining those spaces. And we do intend the two blue spaces, that the blue north of the space, is that north page north?
Page north, yeah.
Yeah, is actually more of it's a possible turnaround area too, so there's maneuverability within the space. And then the intention is that the permeable areas are flexible, so they do have entertainment space, and the owner can have entertainment things like, a movable fireplace or, any of those things. Yeah, so that everyone can kind of spill out to that space and not have to be restricted to the interior. The entry walk is a buff wash concrete paving. And then that matches the buff wash at the rear dining lounge, which also spills into the atrium area. So that way we're kind of creating an indoor-outdoor kind of feel within that zone.
Just to the bottom, to the west of the project here is an alley and basically a parking lot, fast food restaurant. So we've provided screening along there as well. So when you're in the space and really creating zones of flexible use in the space, and but when you're in the space, you're kind of screened from some of the alleys and the parking lots as well.
And then continue the screening along the west side of the building, page south, to keep it consistent and clean from the street view and soften that building.
Answer any questions.
I've got a couple of questions. So starting at the north along Arcadia, so the screening you've got beyond the kind of horizontal fence, it looks like in your rendering, it's an ornamental grass. Is that what you're thinking?
It's gonna be grasses, yeah. He likes the idea of it being really soft and flowing and that kind of thing.
The only reason I bring it up is as long as he understands that there's gonna come a point in the winter where you're gonna have to cut it down, and it's gonna be months into the summer before it comes back. So it's gonna look like that for some of the year, but certainly not all the year. So as long as he's clear on that. So moving inside that, do you take the permeable paving? Because I'm just curious.
The products that we show are the products that the client has liked, the owner has vetted.
Can you go to the images of those?
The
It
idea is
doesn't
to
look
keep
like
it,
they're permeable pavers. How is it working? Because they don't have big lugs on them or anything.
they have nibs that hold them apart. The
They still
Eco
look like
Promenade, if you go down to the blue one, look at the blue.
Whole
box
Foods
in the-
parking lot at Easton, is that what you're doing?
Sorry?
No. Those are. Those things are big.
No, these,
I know that.
yeah, these are by Unilock, and they have little nubbins on the sides
Okay.
that
The
hold them
one
apart.
the one on the left just doesn't look like that could be a permit, because it doesn't look like the gap is big enough. Because usually, you put the lugs in
I know.
and you fill it with nines or something.
Yeah.
They load.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
load.
Yeah, that's off of their brochure for that
Okay,
paver.
okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
So my next question is, are you really gonna put in rails? So you've got this alleyway that goes,
Rails?
well, the
Oh,
faux
well,
rail.
we want to.
Okay, so I've got, you want to.
Uh-huh.
So my question
It
is,
has not been sourced or anything yet, though.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
So this was a parking lot and a car barn. What does that mean, a car barn? So my question is, did they actually
It was the
pull,
trolleys.
do they pull any cars up in here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
The-
Trolley barn was in front of this building.
it was in front of
Train
it.
car. This is an older building for the trolley barn, car barn. It's the storage of the train bar, cars,
Yeah.
The trolley car.
trolley.
And then the.
But they were stored on site.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then conductors resided in buildings on Ramlow Alley across the street, overnight houses.
I'm just curious of where you're putting the tracks would have been, because there were tracks coming into the site, right?
The tracks were coming up High Street and then they could.
But they had a little spur line or something that came over to get into this, okay.
It's a nod to it.
I know.
I don't know historically if they're
It was
placed
the
in the
North
exact
Columbus
spot.
Chariot line,
Okay.
believe it or not.
I guess if you go back to your plan, the other thing is just an observation, is that, I don't know, once you get beyond, so you're going, I guess, south, beyond the orange thresholds, you got an exterior patio that's on the north side of the addition. And I guess for a party, it makes sense to me. It's just a lot of paving
Mhm.
that doesn't really seem to serve any purpose, like, I'm not suggesting it become a garden necessarily, it just is
Sure.
kind of, I'm just like, I don't really get it, because like, if you were in the addition, I mean, unless you put a bazillion pots out there, the garden became like a hardscape garden almost, and it kind of makes more sense to me, so this is their deal, so I'm not being critical, I'm just saying, again, for entertaining, I think it makes a lot of sense, you can have a hell of a party out there, so.
I think, and we've talked about that area before, because it is a small space. We've talked about greening it up more and actually making it, an art piece or something in the future. But, none of that has been really thought through.
I mean, I don't know if they
today.
get enough sunlight, but if you had just a narrow, I mean, it might be something like a spalier on the brick
Sure,
wall, or
sure.
something that just, turns it into, gives it a bit more of a nod to an actual garden, so.
Sure.
I'm not saying you should do that, this is just,
Yeah.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Elvis, could you show us the existing photographs?
You tell me which one you like.
Just do a walk around for all of us so we can.
So this is the front elevation here. So what you would see when looking off of Arcadia. This is the back. So there's like a CVS back here, if you know what I mean, off of Doddridge. And so when you pull into the CVS parking lot, this is what you see from that. And then this is sort of an alley that goes between CVS leading out to High Street, and then that alley continues back into a residential neighborhood. And then this is some interior shots of the building. This is in between the two buildings, I think, over here. And then again, these are sort of those old arches where they would pull the cart or the trolleys in. And then these are some interior shots of the buildings.
Are those glazed brick on the right, the yellow brick? Oh,
Yeah, I
Cool.
think so, and I think
Yeah, they're
that,
very high fired.
yeah, I think that, that came later possibly, and that's sort of what's bricked in.
Could you show us the relationship between the adjacent houses just east
Yeah.
of the
I'll
front
click on
one?
that.
See the front
Street
yard?
view here. So going up Arcadia,
There is
this is
a,
the house next door, and then
Right.
there's this fence situation.
yeah, there's a large retaining wall, there's a change in elevation.
It's about 8 foot tall
Yeah,
Actually,
and covered in that vine.
yeah.
once you show, that's why you want to see anything else, or is
No.
okay, then can you zoom in on that straight on front facade on the left? And then can you split screen it with their drawing of that facade?
Yeah.
You're a wonderful person.
Hold on.
Yeah, that
I know.
Wow.
Perfect.
No, make it bigger, the one on the left, please, zoom in, yeah. Make it about the same size as the other one. Yeah.
Okay. You want just the?
Yeah, you're good, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. I would tell you that you don't have the right measurements on your drawing. The, the doors, I don't believe are the same proportion as you've drawn. They're narrower and taller, I think. There's less brick also between the either side of the door and the corners of the building. Or something. There's something off about the drawing. And the only reason why I'm being obsessive about that is that if you ignore what's above because it's beyond, so you never see it, right? So from the parapet down, I don't think it's a very pleasant facade. I think it's pretty badly proportioned, actually. And yet the existing seemed very nice and comfortable. So I would urge you to measure this elevation better because I think you'll find that it needs to be adjusted. And then I think your canopy is too high, I think. Or maybe it's the right height and maybe the door is actually higher than is drawn on the left. But there are problems there proportionally. And then I also wonder, I wish it felt a little more like home. And I don't mean cutesy, but maybe it's just a proportional thing. Maybe just bringing that canopy down, I don't know. And then the base, I'm not sure what you're doing with the base, so.
Is it concrete right now?
The base around the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
There's
the
like a
canopy
3
needs to
foot or
come
2
down.
foot.
I wonder if currently the porch extends, not really a porch, but
The stoop.
the stoop extends
Yeah.
across the entirety of the front, and I wonder if it's not better off a little more section, the canopy
And
shrink.
maybe the canopy shrinks down narrower.
Yeah, I think we're trying to transition from that industrial manufacturing to residential and try to create the porch idea and that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, well, all I know is that the proportions on the right are much better than the proportions on the left.
I mean, look, it's not gonna be a residential house like the one up the street, so.
No.
And you have plenty of outdoor space, probably no one's gonna sit on the stoop anyway, so I would keep it kind of more sort of confined to the doors, and agree with Frank that probably should field measure various components to make sure you've got the that's right. One other thing I would add is I don't love the transition from the addition to the guardrail above. The addition is, I think, fairly nicely done. Nice big windows, and I like the shadow review of the base that makes it float. By comparison, the guardrail above is a little banal. And I just wonder if there isn't a better way of doing that.
We've looked at like a cable rail that might look a little delicate touch to the project, or possibly glass panels with, you just see sort of those.
I think the loss of the corner is the problem.
Yeah, because it sets back and it's not. I don't know, it seems like there's a opportunity there to improve that. It's a fairly minor thing, but given that this is the one thing that gets added to the project, I think you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
I mean, from my standpoint, I think the landscaping is pretty well done. I think you've effectively turned, what could have been a pretty shitty parking lot into a more urban experience. I'm not convinced the rails are necessary in any way, but if you want to spend money on it, it's not my business.
Which rails?
The rails that go down the alley.
Yeah, those
I mean,
good set.
I can't promise it would happen.
The knot.
The nod.
Budget might not allow in the end.
Yeah. And I guess one clarification, the drawing elevations show that the other building, it's storefront and filling the existing openings, but the windows appear to be Pella units.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, we use the same, Pella window for both. So, yeah, they wouldn't be storefront.
Remind me, what are those again?
The Pella windows, impervious,
Fiberglass.
oh, fiberglass,
What color?
black.
Okay.
Mines are very skinny. These are Pella windows? These big openings?
Yeah, and I was just talking to our window rep that we might need to put a stud in between them, so, but
Yeah,
we talked
and-
about wrapping that.
And around the perimeter too, I think. The frames are very, very stingy. They look just like holes in the wall, essentially. They don't, they're windows, they're holes.
Could you go back to the view from the alley looking east? Because if you don't do the fence, then aren't the cars gonna be visible? When Carrie's point about,
I think there's a different treatment on the west though than there was.
In the west, we're doing a ground cover with shrubs, understory, and then narrow trees.
oh, so the fence
So
is
the-
not along the alley?
The fence does go along the alley, and then it dies back, it comes along the alley here, where the existing wall is.
Mhm.
There's an existing knee wall, sorry, along the wall, the drive-through of the,
Yeah.
whatever this is, White Castle or whatever.
I'm referring to the
rear.
Maybe I
The rear?
misspoke. No,
You want the west, you're concerned about the west.
Yes.
Yeah, the west.
Go to the,
Front west.
Front.
yeah.
Oh.
Mhm.
where the cars would be parked.
Yeah, right. So there's a wall that's about 18 inches tall existing right now along the edge of our property to hold our property up essentially.
Go a
So
little bit west, Belkis. There you go. You can see what she's talking, a little more.
down
There you go.
that drive aisle.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're going down the drive aisle.
right.
So that's existing. So what we're proposing is that's not on our property. We don't touch it. But we have to put up our own fence inside that, in our property.
But that fence is definitely going in?
Yes, our fences.
Okay, so that chain link's not yours.
No, sadly.
That is too bad.
Isn't that terrible?
That part.
That chain link and that knee wall are not ours. Am I correct? I'm correct, yes?
I'd have to look at the.
I think
Again,
we've looked, I don't think they're ours.
yeah,
And so our fence, do you see how the chain link goes down this drive and then turns left towards the porta john?
Yeah.
Our fence is essentially gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna dive into our wall. And then beyond our fence, going further up the drive, we have more plantings to kind of soften that west facade. So that it looks
Presumably you
more-
really won't see their chain link fence from your side of the property.
From our side, we won't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
What fence were you referring to when you said it might not be there? The one on Arcadia?
the rails, when they were talking about the rails.
Oh, they were
Rail.
talking about the rails,
That was
yeah,
sort of
sorry.
the inset within the paver rails that would mimic sort of
The car rails is what they were talking about in the
Okay,
pavement.
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, yeah. So technically, our fence will meet code for that division at fall height, but I don't know, a neighbor would have to want to cut that down. We're taking it out of the front though. That is ours. So our wall, one of the reasons we did the knee wall in the front too is to take up that grade, because we do get much higher on the other end. So our knee wall dives into grade kind of, I think it ends up at only a foot tall on the left, and then our fence holds the datum going straight across.
Now, at some point, you need to for sure put those utility poles in your renderings.
Oh my gosh, they're right in the middle of everything, middle of the sidewalk and
It adds to
everything.
the aesthetic.
Yeah, so we're trying to clean that up.
Okay, can we see the east elevation again, please? Proposed east elevation.
Oh, the other building.
Yes. What are those gray hatched areas on the right, 3 windows?
Detail one, it's a brick metal.
So we have casement windows and those existing openings, they sort of vary in size and they're wider than the casement window. But we really thought that the single casement is it looks the best. So we basically build a infill panel on one side that it would be instead of the existing mason.
You're saying you can't get a standard casement window that'll fit the opening,
Correct, yeah,
and you need to have them operable.
correct, yes.
You need to have them that wide and operable.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are a little wider than for egress, but yeah, I mean, this is as wide of casement window that's standard that we can get. And
What's the minimum width on emergency egress windows?
the opening, it's 5.7 square feet, and the opening, I think, is 24 by 20, and 24 wide.
What if you made the windows a little narrower, just narrow enough, and then had a fixed glass panel next to it? It would be off center, but I have a sense it would look better than that.
Okay, I can see if that's an option.
Yes, agreed.
Because already we're not, I don't hear any complaints that you're getting rid of the divided lights. Or maybe there is complaint because we haven't talked about it, I don't know, but, you know, it'd be nice if you could do 1/3, 2/3 actually on those windows, but I don't know if that'll work.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the comments on the divided lights. I think on January, we had divided lights in these, with this new design, with the glass box addition. We went without the divided lights because it felt more cohesive with the whole project, but it's something that.
Well, the thing I'm having trouble with is that I believe those windows are, I believe this drawing is not accurate also.
Okay.
I believe those windows are larger than this drawing makes it look. At least when I look.
Could you show us the existing?
See, I don't think we have a photo straight, but here, just, whoa. I don't know, maybe it's just my perception, but those look like significantly larger windows than what the drawing represents. Now, I could obviously be wrong, but I don't know.
I'm happy to check all that for you. You could be right too.
Because it affects the
Yeah.
how it looks. I think the facade, that facade is much nicer facade than the drawing.
Back to the drawing.
I mean, I think it's worth checking. We're seeing the photo complete, so when you did the drawing, did you feel verify everything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'll double check everything, so.
I mean, I think just getting back to the divided lights thing, I mean, it seems to me there are two potential strategies. One is you treat the existing building as an existing historical thing and you try and restore it in the character. The addition sits off different and separate. The approach you've taken is a little more cohesive. And I think it works. I mean, the original building is, industrial, clean and austere, and it's got these kind of big openings, and I think they're perfectly fine just inset with large glass windows. I mean, I'm with.
I like the old ones better, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm with Frank. I don't like the bright metal infill panel. I would just narrow the casement to whatever the minimum opening is for an EER window and get a fixed glass pane. But I think I'm fine. I think this is cohesive. I'm fine.
What about transoms? What about running the transoms all the way to the right?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, because if you're gonna put doors.
Are those all three doors
Correct,
where
yeah.
there are transoms?
Yes.
I don't know, I don't have those thoughts.
I can live either way. I just like to see glass.
What is the height of those openings?
Let's say they're close to 6 feet, I think.
It's on the.
What's the work image? I can provide that. Sure.
Can you get a door to fill the whole opening?
Um,
Transom?
You zoom in on the upper left, the patio door.
Yeah, upper left on the patio door, the dimensions. Upper left.
9'5".
Or up to the left. There you go.
Oh, they're already 8-foot doors. Okay, all right, they're already.
So yeah, I missed the comment, but yeah, those are existing window openings, so we would enlarge, we would put the door in there and then take the masonry out from door
So
to.
which one is the new, are they all existing openings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they all are different in width?
I think there's, one of them that's wider than the other, the second one from the right is wider.
So you can find a door that's wide enough, but not a window that's wide enough.
Yes. I think so. I think we could find a window, but not a casement
You
window.
might be able to go to
They
3D.
make
Go
a
to
double
aerial,
hung, but I
go
don't think we wanna
3D,
do that.
Might show up, because that way you'll be able to get,
Yeah, those openings are more vertical than you've drawn.
Well, maybe a double hung that's the right width with,
I can do it on this.
I hate to ask you to
Well,
put
go back to
divided
that.
light.
you should be able to on Google Maps.
Maybe.
Go to-
I don't think it needs to be divided lights, and I like casement windows, I'm with you, but
To the
if
satellite.
the window really can be a window and be the right width.
I understand what you're
Maybe
saying.
it wants to be a double hung window.
I think we have a couple options here to, and I think I hear what you're saying, the
I think on.
no infill side. and
Yeah.
So just like you.
See what there is.
So you can't do
I
anything.
mean,
Best way to
realistically,
do it.
You used.
the building does not have a ton of windows, so I think I would try and maximize the amount of glazing.
So it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wish.
It's all right.
I mean, I think, you know, I guess my take on the whole thing is you've got, again, you got two options. The addition is clean and modern. And either the way you treat the openings, the rest of the building kind of, you know, does that too, and it ties together. Or you treat the existing building a little more traditionally as a contrast. And I think as long as you're consistent in the conceptual approach, from my perspective, there's fine.
Did you keep the water tower? The water tank?
We're not proposing to, I don't have it in the drawings, but, we're not proposing to. remove
This
it
may be
because
nuts,
it's
but you
some
could,
issues.
you could stack the double hung windows.
What do you mean?
You could have a double hung window over a double hung window. Or make the top two fixed, and then it would be divided into 4 lights. Which is the same division, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a vertical. It could, you understand? what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't know if that works.
Yeah.
It's just, these are all things I would try.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting I have the solution for you. I just,
yeah, I will,
these are what I would obsess over. I know that. So. Those are great proportion, nice looking windows. They really, very. And they're 9'6" tall? No,
no,
then they're off the floor. So they're like 8 foot tall?
probably with, 7.5, I think. Somewhere around there. I'll have all that information. It sounds like for the design, we're coming back next month with,
Yeah,
so, yeah, I'll have that information and make these, visions.
I'm curious, is this owner occupied?
This will be, yeah.
Yeah.
Was, yeah. One will likely be rented, it's 2 houses.
No, should we go, we're gonna see that.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
Any other comments? No? Let's circle back to the variances.
I move to support the variances as submitted.
I'll second it.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Garrido,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Hauser. Yes. Thank you. And then it sounds like, we may continue the design portion of the application. That's the staff's
Right.
suggestion based on comments, but I'll let someone make that motion.
Yes, I move to continue the application.
Second,
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello,
yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Yes.
Ms. Yuhas Sao.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
We're getting there.
Now we have the PV Square houses.
The applicant's not here?
All right, move on.
James Clark.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh.
wonderful. So we're not very.
Did you skip one?
The next one is 1782 North High, the little sign for Walgreens. But we did that one already, so the next one is 2259 North High, and I'll start the series of the three houses.
Okay, I thought there was one before them, but 121.
Yeah, we did that, yeah. Just opening up the materials here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are on 2259 North High Street, which is a contributing brick structure built in 1905 and is a part of the Pavey Square development. Today, the applicant is seeking board approval for the following exterior modifications, and that's new limestone spheres atop existing masonry pillars, replacing all the windows on all the elevations using vinyl silver line V3 white colonial gridded double hung windows with low E glass, replacing the east and north elevation doors with Therma-Tru steel traditions wood edge doors, replacing the east elevation front entry transom like for like with a new address to match the existing front and color font, it should say font and color, replacing the north elevation side lights like for like, painting portions of the existing brick on the north and south elevation white. And staff notes that landscaping, roof replacement, brick tuck pointing, replacing downspouts, replacing siding, replacing the metal window well, and painting the fascia, freeze molding, and trim have all been staff approved already. And the applicant does not believe that any of the items proposed for replacement are original to the building, and that all items appear to be 30 to 40 years old. So submitted materials include a site plan, hardscape plan, stone sphere detail, elevations, and material cut sheets. So if you look to this one, so this is the site plan. This is that first house after the new Pavey Square development on North High Street. Here you have their hardscape plan, and you can see where they're proposing these limestone spheres on top of the existing fencing. And then here's the detail for those spheres. And then this is their elevation. So if you look at the front, they're proposing to replace this door and then the transom above with an integrated door and transom unit. So that, and then another highlight is where it's sort of faded, they want to repaint all of this. And then over here, they're proposing to replace the windows and then replacing the existing door and these side lights with one integrated unit. And then we have materials after that. So after review, the proposal is generally inconsistent with the recommendations of the University District Plan. The plan recommends that high quality and durable materials be used, that original windows and doors be preserved, and that when replacement is necessary, the original depth, design, and proportion should be maintained. The plan also recommends that public, semi-public, and private spaces should be demarcated clearly through the use of landscape, walls, fences, gates, pavement treatment signs, and other methods to denote boundaries or buffers. And after consultation with the historic preservation staff, staff notes that some transoms may be original and that replacing original door and transom openings that are individual units with new integrated door transom units. So you'd be eliminating the original wood mullion between the door and the transom is not consistent with plan guidelines. Staff also notes that vinyl window products for contributing structures is not recommended and that painting brick is not recommended. So as such, staff recommends approval with conditions. And the recommended conditions are that a window from the approved window list be used for all window replacements and that all openings match the original. That any transoms and wood mullions between doors and transoms be maintained. To replace doors with the same design and profile of the existing doors to fully fit the original opening. And that no new paint be applied to the brick. And that if the test patch is successful, that the existing paint be chemically removed, followed by cleaning and tuck pointing of the brick. Thank you.
Thank you. We have someone from the visiting public that would like to speak?
No, not for this.
Dr.
Or, oh, yes. Could I go ahead?
Is it all right to do that?
Yeah, you're allowed to, of course.
But I need to swear you in first. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You have a microphone, please?
I'm Susan Keeney with Columbus Landmarks, and I
Hit the
apologize.
button, make sure the green light's on.
The green light.
Is it on?
Oh, there it is.
There you go, thank you.
Wonderful. Susan Keeney with Columbus Landmarks. I'm sorry I didn't realize this was on the agenda, but as I'm hearing this, I just wanted to remind you all that Columbus Landmarks has a preservation easement on the paving block. And so all property, all changes need to be approved by the owner and Columbus Landmarks as well. I don't know what that is for this board, but I do know that the owner and applicant need to come and meet with Columbus Landmarks to discuss the changes. It has to be a mutual agreement. So that is in perpetuity.
And are there, did you execute drawings that show what the changes are you're going to make?
Yes, we did
Because they would need to see those.
yes, we have this drawings, I'm just saying like instead of doing an actual drawing, we just took the pictures. Because it's so much easier doing that than going out and getting the drawings for it. I mean, we didn't scale the windows, but the owner has. They've gone out and said, this window size is this window size is this.
Well, I think if there's an agreement that's already been established that there needs to be coordination between any modifications to these buildings and landmarks, I think that needs to happen before we even talk about it, so.
Yeah.
Right. Karen, can I add something to that? Not to complicate the situation, but the buildings were reworked prior to about 1960. They were built in 1905, and they would have been American foursquare with a big front porch and very much the blocky looking porch. And on a trip to Colonial Williamsburg, Dr. Pavey was struck with Colonial Williamsburg, and at that point, he removed the porches and did rework some of the things. The transoms probably are original, but if you were noticed that some of the materials or some of the design seems a little bit different, they were done much later. I don't have the exact date, but I would tend to think by about 1963, they were completed in the way we most normally see them. And that's why they look so different than the American four squares that are all throughout the neighborhood.
This is a staff comment. So if the board were to motion to continue these applications, staff recommends that a condition be applied, that when they come back, we would need a letter from Columbus Landmarks noting that there is an easement on these homes and that they have worked with the applicant and approve of the proposed changes.
Great, agree, yep,
And
agree.
then one comment I want to make is, I don't think I have any problem with letting previously painted brick just weather. Just as a comment. You know, maybe others do, but I would have no problem leaving that brick wall just like it is and let
I mean,
Some people spend money for that.
yeah, and let the paint just weather, rather than do anything. That's just a comment. So I move that we table this application till such time that the applicant reviews their proposals with Columbus Landmark and come to agreement as to the proposal.
Yeah. But I
For the second.
Still need a second.
All right, so Mr. Fleming,
either no.
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello,
Yeah.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Yuha Sauer.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I make the same
That was also
motion,
some
I make,
figure like painted brick.
I make the same motion for the next item on the
For the
agenda.
next item? For,
Next two items.
Well, I think we have to do it individually. The next-
so the next is 2263 to 2265 North Pay Street. So do we want to make that same?
Yes,
motion
yes.
to- Okay. Okay, so for that one, Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Yuha Sauer.
Yes.
Okay, and then the one after that is 2275 to 2279 North Pike Street. Do you want to do the same motion and second?
Yes,
for
so,
that?
Yes,
so
please.
second.
Okay.
Groundhog
Okay,
Day.
so Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello.
Yes,
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Yuha Sauer.
Yes.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify, all three of those also come with the condition that a letter from Columbus Landmarks be provided with future application materials, showing that they approve of the proposed changes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make that. Thank you.
Just a question. Are you James Clark?
I'm sorry, James, not Jack.
So you're the owner now?
No, I'm the architect.
Oh, because it says owner.
Oh, no, I hope not.
I have applicant for use, Clark.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Baby
misread.
squared, DL.
Yeah,
et
okay.
cetera.
So does the Pavey family still own that?
No.
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 Do we have any general comments or on any of these applications, or are we okay to move forward?
Okay, to move forward with I stand.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's getting close.
Breathe over again. So then now, we're actually on to our last application, ahead of schedule. Um,
Are they here?
Is,
no,
do we have the?
It's an hour.
Yeah,
We're
we're
an
an
hour
hour ahead of our estimated time.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I'm willing to wait a little bit, but I will note the time is an estimate, and as an applicant myself, you come early.
I would never come at the time that
Yeah.
staff said to come.
Yeah,
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna learn a valuable lesson.
As a matter of fact, the rule in my office is you are 20 minutes early to the beginning, no matter where you are.
Tell you.
Yeah, we, in all of our communications, we recommend that applicants arrive at least a half hour before their scheduled time, so,
So
we're
to
happy.
back you up, we should stay until 6:30?
No,
No?
no, you know, the board can motion to continue the application to next month, and, you know, we still have to, approve, you know, move to, put the staff approved applications into the record, and then there's, an item for the staff approval list, so, you know, we can always circle back if they do show up during that time, but
Well, let's move on because they really didn't do anything as far as I'm concerned. So if they
Exactly.
don't show up anyway, then it's fine by me. So.
it's true. Okay, so do we want to move to, oh, I'm sorry, that one doesn't need a motion because it's conceptual, so we can just move forward in the agenda. So the next item would be to motion to enter the, staff approved applications into the formal record.
I move that we move them forward into the staff record.
Okay. Do I have a
second,
Okay. So Mr. Fleming,
yes.
Mr. Grado,
Yes.
Mr. Petrozello,
Yes,
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Ms. Yuha Sauer, Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and so then the last item on the agenda is to just talk about the staff approval list. I'll bring up,
Can we motion to turn the heat on?
I would. I second that. My cancer.
Sorry, that's the interior of the building. We only have
Cancer freezing. But basically, every year it's customary for staff to look at the staff approval list to see if there are any opportunities to update it. And so what we're proposing is we spoke with management and we're requesting that the board consider updating the staff approval list so that staff can review and approve all graphics applications. And this is really just something for you all to consider versus deciding today. But really, we want to streamline the application process. And, with some background, right now, staff can approve the reface of an existing graphic that isn't illuminated. But we're looking towards the downtown staff approval list. And on that list, staff does have approval to approve all graphics applications. Now, it's not done alone by the staff member. Downtown staff reviews the request with at least a manager. HPO staff or the administrator get involved if necessary, and staff always has the option to bring, cases that raise a red flag to the board, even if they are staff approvable. Really the benefits, it's on both sides, but we're just looking to streamline meetings as much as possible, assure quality and consistency within guidelines, and then really focus your time on larger, more complex applications, which we're seeing more of. And then on the applicant side, it shortens their turnaround time. So instead of a month-over-month approval or review, it's a week-over-week review. And so with the staff review, I would of course make sure it's consistent with plan recommendations. If it's not, I would bring it before you all. And then, like I said, we always have the ability to bring any application before the board, regardless if it's consistent or not. And then I looked at our data from last year. So over half of the meetings, so 66% had graphics cases. And of the meetings where we did have a graphics case, about 48 minutes were spent on those cases per meeting. So it could save over an hour. And then of the 19 cases that were presented to the UIDRB with graphics last year, almost 80% were approved or approved with conditions. So it seems like, there's a lot of consistency there. And so, not to belabor it, but there's benefits on both sides. We'd appreciate if you could consider it. And just, I wanted to get your feedback on the idea. Do you agree, not agree? What are your thoughts that I can take back to my management on this idea? That's my pitch.
Is your client coming? Okay, yeah.
I think that there's a difference between downtown and campus.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would go this far.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to have applicants come back to us a second time. So what I would suggest is bring them here for the first time as normal.
Mm-hmm.
And we provide our comments.
Mm-hmm.
And then staff, if they're approved with conditions or even not approved, but we give direction that staff can approve them. That would be as far as I would want to go, that we would at least never have to see an application twice.
So the rule of thumb is if the board approves with conditions, those conditions are automatically something that staff can review and determine.
But I think it's typically that way. I think what Frank is saying, even if we say, hey, look, we're not gonna approve it, we don't like it, you gotta make changes 1 through 12. Like you would be the arbiter of saying, okay, on behalf of the board, I think you've met their conditions.
Or you say you have to go back.
Okay, I would say in those cases, then we all have to approve it with conditions and list what those.
No ambiguity. Yeah, I mean, and I think.
Procedurally.
So just so I understand this, Bill, because this is something you guys are trying to streamline across all the boards.
Well, the idea is it's in place of downtown. Ideally, university is the next, and then East Franklinton would follow. Historic, sort of a different animal, but that's what we're thinking of in terms of looking long term.
I mean,
Just to streamline things and make sure that we're focusing on larger, more complicated cases as much as possible.
and I think to be clear, Belkis and Mark presented it to Carrie and myself as the chair and vice chair. I'm open to it. I mean, many of the signs and graphics are transient anyway. And so, you know, if it, I don't know, I think it's like,
Fight about it, okay, I do think that they're different things. Downtown and campus are different. I think there are probably more businesses in the university area that have signs than there are downtown.
that's good, yeah.
That's fair. I respect that.
And for me, it would be, maybe what covers us is what you said. If it doesn't comply with the guidelines, you automatically have to bring it here.
Yeah,
So if
that's
somebody
the
wants to
principle,
have
of course.
that fancy projecting sign that flashes and says, you know, come and buy food or whatever, that they'd have to come before the board, right?
Right, so our rule of thumb is if it doesn't strictly meet plan guidelines, like, and it doesn't tick every box, even if one box doesn't meet the mark, we bring it to a board. Only the ones that pass apply, like that little Walgreens sign we just had. Okay, that would be something that.
But yeah, if it was a sign that exceeded and often they do, the text exceeds the guidelines.
Right, text, size,
Area,
location,
yeah.
anything like that.
So the big Walgreens sign would have come here,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, a lot of
All
them
right,
do
there you go.
because,
All
And we have already approved the ones for the University Plaza and other things, you know, that when you're in process, you're presented before us, so we have guidelines and guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, this is something that's just for consideration this month, but if you're feeling decent or good about it, then it would be a formal motion and vote on next month's agenda to adopt the new staff approval list. And I would have a draft staff approval list. So this is just something to think about. And then next month we'll revisit it and we'll make a formal vote.
well, I guess I'm curious then just to hear my fellow board members.
Yes.
I mean, I think I know France, but. Gary, what do you think?
I'm conflicted, as always. I'm not trying to shortchange any city staff, but the one thing, love or hate whatever comes out of our mouth or somewhere in between, but I think that there are times when, even for signage and graphics, that the collective experience of the board, I just think we're gonna notice things I don't think the average, I shouldn't say layperson, but I think that we're gonna be sensitive to things that
A non-designer.
Yeah.
might not notice.
That's fair.
So now recognizing again that a lot of these signs, they change a lot. So that's not to say that, you know, oh, a bad one got through, but it's only going to be there for 18 months. I mean, so,
Yeah, that's fair.
but having said that, I mean, there's parents do as well. So there are conditions where it's going to come to us automatically anyway. So
I would agree.
But if business changes hands 4 times in 3 years, then come up with a new plan, right?
Brian, I haven't heard from you yet. I know
guess-
this
Yeah,
is
come
your
on,
first.
Nick.
I guess I would say from that, I hear your comments on that, but if there's guidelines of, hey, if it's within this size, it's within this thickness, it's there, those guidelines, there's a fine line between playing designer and exactly what we may like or what's there and.
but we enjoy torturing it so much. I'm really.
I'm adjusting the.
That final line.
But it's usually the design quality of the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's, I guess it's getting familiar with how stringent those rules and how strictly, and it's a level of getting comfort with Belkis. And I mean, I worked with Belkis on the EFRB for many times. I know she's gonna be more stringent and detailed than anyone. So I feel that if she thinks it meets those design, it's probably to a level that we would. And so my general's comfortable with it.
So I'm curious, and we might have discussed this a couple of weeks back, but when this comes up, it's just need a simple majority vote.
Oh, from you all?
Right.
4 people. You need 4 to make an affirmative vote on
Okay.
any action.
Okay.
So again, think on
Yeah,
it, we'll
yeah.
sit on it for a month, and then next time it'll be up for, as an agenda item to vote on, and I'll have a draft, you know, staff approval list with that new language. And then I'll respect, you know, whatever way it goes, and this is just something, it's just part of our practice every year to see what we got and see if we can make it better, improve it in some way, or streamline things.
I continue to be astounded that someone's keeping such close stats on how many minutes we spend on graphics.
Meticulous.
Man.
I'm impressed.
And notice she didn't say.
I think we should call you on that. We want proof.
Okay, well, thank you for your time and attention on that matter. And it looks like, our applicants for, the conceptual proposal are here, so we can jump over to them. To my staff report. So are we ready to do this?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is a conceptual proposal for essentially what I'm calling 2180 North High Street or Lane and High. And this site is located at the block bounded by North High Street to the west, East Norwich Avenue to the north, Pearl Alley to the east, and Lane Avenue to the south, with the exception of the lot on the corner of High Street and Norwich Avenue. 5 buildings are existing on the site, 4 of which are contributing buildings built between 1900 and 1915. Staff notes that the 4 existing contributing buildings are excellent examples of early 20th century mixed-use design and one of the few historic blocks that remain intact on High Street. The 5 existing buildings include a CVS pharmacy, 2 brick 2- to 3-story contributing mixed-use buildings, commercial multifamily, 1 brick 2-story contributing apartment building, and 1 2-story contributing single-family home. Today, the applicant is seeking feedback on a conceptual proposal to demolish 2 structures and partially demolish two of the structures. In their place, the applicant proposes to construct a mixed-use building. A 17 and 15-story L-shaped tower will sit on the corner of Lane Avenue and North High Street that transitions to a 9-story building to the northeast. Along Pearl Alley, a 6-story building will sit behind the remaining Alhambra Court buildings and will step down, moving north with a single-story building at the corner of East Norwich Avenue and Pearl Alley. The development will contain a 3.5 level, 212 space parking garage below and above grade access from Pearl Alley, with a commercial space on the first floor and rental units on the above floors. The preserved portions of the Alhambra Court buildings will mirror their current uses, with new first floor retail buildings located behind, and a recommendation on a height variance of 115 feet would be needed at a future request for action. The applicant last came before the board in January 2022 to present a conceptual design whereby board members stated that the design is moving in the right direction and primarily commented on the building height. Some members voiced support of a taller building as seen in the short north. Some stated that they would not support a building taller than 72 feet, and some raised concerns of the height not respecting the character of the Alhambra Court buildings, putting them in shadow. In addition, the board recommended that the entirety of the Alhambra Court buildings be retained and noted that the site's main corner serves as a gateway into the Old North neighborhood. In response to the board feedback, the applicant maintained half of the Alhambra Court buildings along North High Street, updated the design to retain the contributing brick apartment building along East Norwich Avenue, included a partial step down from the southern tower to the Alhambra Court buildings, and maintained open courtyard space between the 2 Alhambra Court buildings. And the submitted conception materials include a site plan, floor plans, program diagrams, and renderings. We can take a look at those. So here are their materials on the slides. So here we have the site. So again, you'll see here that the existing two-story apartments remain, which is something different from the previous proposal. And then here we still have half of the Alhambra Court buildings and the courtyard. Here are the floor plans. Then here are the renderings. This rendering here shows the changes. So in this middle mass here, you can see how they almost notch this out to step it down. So that way some sun reaches the Alhambra Court buildings area. And then you also see that brick apartment building being maintained. Here's another rendering of that. So again, this area here was notched out. And then here are the brick apartment buildings that were maintained. There's another rendering. So after review, the University District Plan recommends a site for regional mixed use, which recommends adaptive reuse and or expansion of contributing buildings, a minimum FAR of 1, max height of 72, and parking at a rate of 3.5 spaces per bed for residential uses. The plan's design guidelines recommend the preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings, which contribute to the district's diverse character, that new construction preserve and enhance unique characteristics of the district, that High Street and Lane Avenue continue as mixed-use corridors with the densest development, and that the design of new construction be compatible with nearby contributing buildings and surrounding streetscape. Furthermore, the plan recommends that the off-site impacts of new buildings' height and mass be mitigated through the setback of higher stories along the front facade, including rear frontages higher than 35 feet, be set back at least 20 feet from the property line. The plan states that buildings taller than 4 stories provide additional space for pedestrians adjacent to the public sidewalk. Lastly, the plan recommends the use of high-quality durable materials, inclusion of plazas, courtyards, seating, and other pedestrian amenities, and that landscaping and street trees be provided. Staff notes and is generally supportive of the applicant's response to the board and staff feedback. Staff generally supports the proposed height located at the corner of North High Street and Lane Avenue, as the plan recommends for the densest development along these two corridors, and as the increase in height may be mitigated by a transition in height towards the neighborhoods to the north and east. Staff encourages an additional step-down transition from the tower's front facade down to the contributing Alhambra Court buildings and North High Street to provide relief to the streetscape in a more compatible design. While staff appreciates the added preservation of half the Alhambra Court buildings, staff continues to encourage full preservation of the buildings. And while staff is supportive of the height proposed, the ground level elevations and pedestrian experience will be important to the success of the project design. As such, staff recommends tall, transparent ground floor elevations, wide sidewalks, landscaping, and pedestrian amenities along both the North High Street, Lane Avenue, and on East Norwich as appropriate. The building materials transition to the residential neighborhood to the north and east. Landscaping, street trees, and pedestrian amenities on the site will be considered and reviewed for consistency with plan recommendations as the project progresses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me for a second. Is there a list of the variances that?
There are no concrete variances at this time. It's just conceptual. The only variance that I can take note of right now is what a height variance may be given the current height versus, the recommended height. And that is, let's see, what was it?
6 stories, 72.
115 feet. So I have a recommendation on a height variance of 115 feet would be needed at a future request for action, but this is just conceptual, so that could change.
115 feet over the 72.
Correct. Yeah, that's the variance there. Do we have the applicant here?
Yes.
Here we are. Oh, and I believe we have a speaker on this one. Is Susan still here?
Yes, she is.
Okay, I think she wanted to speak.
after the,
After they're sworn in.
after the
I
presentation.
think it makes sense to have the applicant present the design as it stands now, and then have the public speak in response.
Okay, yeah. I forget by the end, so I just want to.
So those that would like to speak, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Cover last time that I need the mic.
Okay.
Again, thank you so much for hearing us again tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to come back with what we believe is a big step in the right direction after hearing the feedback at last month's meeting. Really do appreciate the constructive feedback we've received throughout the course of this process, and look forward to hearing what you all have to say about our updated design tonight. So thank you so much. And this time I'll kick it over to Bhakti with BB Design.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to review basically what we updated since the last time we presented, which was last month. And if you don't mind, because if we could get it to that
The rendering.
kind of, yeah, that one view
Yep.
from the, yeah, that one, yeah, that kind of looks like the entire project, so we can look at it. So I wanted to start sort of with what updates we made since we last presented, starting from the south going north. So on that building on the corner of Lane and High, we kind of have this step building, which is 17 on Lane Avenue, 15 on High, and then it's 9 stories on Pearl. So it's kind of a stepped C. And then the north piece of it, like Belkis was pointing out, we kind of recessed it and also dropped the height on it. That was some of the commentary we got last time we presented, that height and the facade being so flat there was kind of creating, overhang, like looking over the Alhambra buildings and also possibly creating additional shadows. So that was sort of our direct response to that. As far as the Alhambra buildings go, we are retaining, as you can see, half of that. And the building is set back behind it. So the building actually then continues north behind the towers. And that goes to the 5 over podium and then all the way up to Norwich, which is a single-story building. Going back to our tower building on the corner, that kind of came from discussions with the board where we were sort of encouraged to keep pushing all of the density to that side. And as we were doing that, as you might recall, our initial scheme, we kind of had underground parking pretty much across the site, north to south. And as we moved density to the south, we also kind of moved all of the parking just to that tower, all of the underground as well as above ground parking. So because of just not wanting to be so close to the Alhambra buildings and going into a basement situation there. Because of that, and then because of how that footprint is laid out and us wanting to maximize retail on the first floor, essentially, if you look at the plans, we have a basement, a deeper basement with mechanized parking. The first floor is essentially just entirely retail, no parking. And then we ramp up and then we have 3 levels of parking above. So that kind of adds a little bit to the height. It's not all residential what you're looking at. Some of that is the height is added because of the parking coming out of the ground. So I just wanted to point that out. And then we still wrap the High Street and Lane Avenue facades with apartments. So you don't see it in this view, but you would see some of that parking along for parking garage on the facade. So I just wanted to point that out. And then along High Street, as we go further, like I was saying, we're maintaining at the Alhambra Court buildings, 2 bays of both of those buildings. And then all of the uses that are currently in there will be maintained. So the retail on High Street will remain retail, and then the apartments will continue to be apartments in the new project. The green space, I think we had kind of a plaza type design last time, and we heard from you that it needed to be a little bit calmer. So we're actually going back to maybe looking at just keeping it more similar to what it is currently and maintaining sort of that entire streetscape, very similar to what it is. And as we're also, currently that green space goes from High Street to Pearl, we're also maintaining that in our new scheme. So that green space does continue. As it gets towards Pearl, that's where we're introducing new retail. And that space, we potentially are looking at maybe doing a little bit of a plaza design because it will be under the building, so I don't think green will really work there anyway. And that would be a little bit more of a plaza. So we're kind of transitioning the green space into more of a plaza underneath the building that spans across the green space. And so the building in the north, again, the building that sits behind Alhambra is 4 stories of apartments above 2 pieces of retail. And then as we looked at this going further north, we really were starting to, look at Norwich, which we had a lot of conversation about, the historic nature of the north side of Norwich and the implications of this building on that. And so we wanted to kind of start to step down, but also really kind of re-look at what we were doing along that facade. And so we decided that we actually are going to step the building back, but also keep that existing brick 2-story building. And that will again we'll keep it, but we'll also maintain the use on that. So that pretty much stays as it is. And the only intervention that we will have on Norwich is sort of that corner building will be replaced by sort of a 1-story retail. And what that does is along Pearl, which was another discussion we had, and retail is kind of an important aspect of this project. We are looking for retail, quite a bit of retail on it. So this creates opportunities of a variety of retail, some along High, some along Lane, and then all down Pearl, you have different kinds of retail. So it gives you a variety of retail and activates Pearl Street, which is also interesting and similar to what's going on further down on High Street. So those are kind of, what we have done with, those are the interventions we've made with our previous design. We've responded to the stepping down towards Norwich, we've responded to the density being on the corner and kind of playing with the facade so that the shadowing is reduced somewhat. We do understand that that corner house is still, a contributing, is part of that, the buildings that are considered contributing. So we have in fact completed a house report on that building, I believe. So we can provide that to the board as well. So I think we've made really good progress in keeping quite a bit of the current fabric that's important along High Street and Norwich has been sort of our goal. With that, I will hand it over to Randy to speak a little bit more of that aspect. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Randy Black. I know most of you, I think. I'm a former historic preservation officer for the city, but currently retired. And it's hard to retire forever. So I've been contacted by lots of developers and architects about projects happening in historic districts. And over time, I've offered preservation and consulting for projects that maybe needed some assistance in best practices. And to that end, I got engaged in September of last year on this, and I walked the property with, which is always my first piece, is I like to go to the property actually by myself, which I did at first, and then met with the architects and did an assessment of the existing buildings. There are lots of important pieces here that need to be taken into consideration. And initially, the plans seem to be to remove most, if not all, and that was not going to be appropriate, and it wasn't something that I could participate in. But over time, we developed a relationship and an understanding of what my role as a preservation consultant would be. The Alhambra Court is a really critical piece to this, and how the ground is, the landscape is treated there is very, very important. That's half of it is being saved now. There's more discussion on your sense of if that's enough or not. One of the very important things, and we've come a long way since the beginning of this presentation, the units on Norwich and the brick buildings are critical, I think, from a preservation standpoint, reflecting the streetscape on the north side. And originally that was a component that was not going to be included. Now it is. There are some things I talked about early on. The landscape issue here, the tree removal is going to be really critical. It's something that should have happened, in my opinion, quite a while ago, because it's causing damage to the building. So how that landscape then is treated will be important. In terms of the end property there on Norwich and Pearl, I applied the sort of standard Section 106 view of this. It's been altered a great deal. I should say something that you already know. Any property can be rehabbed. And from a historic standards component, the windows, the roof, the doors, the siding, even the rain carrier treatment has all changed significantly. Therefore, given the scale of this project, I think that it's appropriate to consider the removal of this if HABs can be performed. I would say that about single-story garage in historic districts too, even though Model A garages aren't really very useful anymore for lots of folks. The reality is, if they get removed, there ought to be a HABs report done if they're in a historic district. This is no different of a situation. So I recommended that as well. As I say, I've been engaged since September of last year. There have been 4 conceptual reviews thus far. And one of my earlier recommendations is to talk about things conceptually before making up your mind how you want to go about the final finish piece, because I think the discussion during conceptual reviews is valuable to applicants. And in my experience in the past, I've thought that oftentimes developers and applicants are in a hurry to get to the final review, which in my experience slows things down and it doesn't speed them up. Really, I think the evolution of this reflects motion in the right direction. Of course, there's lots more once this gets to its final review time, because finish treatments, materials, all of those, placement of windows and doors, all of those things remain for discussion in the next stages. And I think also, removal of surface parking is a critical advantage and always in the best interest of any part of town, really. That's happening here, so that's a positive. How the finished treatments of the buildings are incorporated to the existing neighborhood along Pearl Street will be important as well. And the loss of back end of the Alhambra is something that needs to be further discussed. It's important. The loss of pieces of it is important. Can it be incorporated into this new redo? That's a serious question, and it's something that I've talked with it's about through. And that's really an overview. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you. I believe we do have a member for the Susan. She already been sworn in, so she.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hi, Susan Keeney here. There is more detail in the plans, but the basic concept is pretty much the same. In terms of how the Alhambra Court garden apartments are still being handled, this is a treatment and not preservation. And if preservation is the reason for the magnitude of the variances being requested, then we really need to see preservation. The most appealing and engaging part of the renderings is the detail of the historic buildings. I know that the new construction is just the massing at this point, but the massing is a good indicator of what the buildings will be. The new buildings will will overwhelm and overpower their neighbors and make what remains of any historic structures look just like that, a leftover appendage and very out of place. And I believe that no amount of detail on these new buildings can change that. The streets allow conversation between buildings, and this is particularly important at Lane and High. It's an iconic intersection in the University District, and as we've said before, even when the new South dormitories were being developed, campus partners and the university did not permit the 20-story structures that were originally proposed for that site. We know that the university is its own zoning category and not really a part of the university district plan, but no matter what you think of the South dorms, it's important to understand that even OSU considered the scale and relationship of their property to their surroundings when planning for their new dorms. The existing context is important. I've seen this board work diligently with other projects to walk them back from the ledge and whittle them into something that is sensible and sensitive. We trust that with your experience and the benchmarks established in the university district plan, that you will guide this project into one that will benefit not just the developer, but our community.
Thank you. Who'd like to start?
I'd like to ask if Bilkis could read the staff recommendations again to make sure that I.
Certainly. Seriously, I mean, we heard the entire staff recommendation and it's 639. Respectfully, I'm going to suggest that you can reread them on your tablet.
I'm sorry, I can't hear a word you're saying. Is this soft spoken?
Belkis read the staff report in full. I suggest that you can read it on the tablet. I think we're 40 minutes over the normal time, and I
understand that, but I do think that in order to give some honest feedback, we should be looking at least the recommendations of staff. What she has up on the screen is look at it again one more time.
I can quickly summarize it.
Sure.
So staff recommends that there be a step down from the very tall mass along North High Street down to the Alhambra Court buildings further deep to the street. We support the height, but it has to be mitigated by step downs and respecting the scale of the neighborhoods. And then in the future, we're really going to be paying attention to the pedestrian experience. So what treatment, of the streetscape will be street trees, landscaping, and pedestrian amenities. So we're going to be looking at all of that, also with an eye to, high quality materials of the sort.
Now, what I wanted to stress was what Belkis has up on the screen too, that while the staff appreciates the added preservation of half of the Alhambra Court building, staff continues to encourage full preservation of the Alhambra Court buildings. I've really come into this trying to be without preconceived notion as to what could happen here. And I really am encouraged by the fact that there has been certainly movement to hearing what we've said, and also what Randy said about the Norwich, that sort of entrance and what's happening there. But I guess as I study this more, I'm not so sure that what I don't want to see, or what I do want to see, however, is what would you build if you had to stay within the University District guidelines and within the recommendations of where the staff would like to see it. In other words, at this point, I think we're still just going to be edging for months back and forth and back and forth, but I don't really have an idea of what it would possibly be like if you kept the frontage of the commercial on High Street, at least part or all of Norwich, to the old farmhouse area, I think, and the entire Alhambra Court. I'm having a harder time now also thinking about the building that is along Norwich that's going to be commercial. And the impact of that commercial, whichever way it faces. Does it face High Street or does it face Pearl, like some of the other buildings closer into 15th Avenue on the commercial end do? I guess I don't want to keep going over the same things. This is just me personally, not the board. But I really want to see a concept presented to us that has to build within what is already stated in the guidelines. And then if that is possible to sort of give a few more amenities to, whether it was height or something else on the corner, then I think that's where it becomes a lot easier for me to go along with variances to what we've established. We went through this process not that long ago in terms of updating the guidelines, and we have been very clear that we saw Lane Avenue, that corner, as a thing to be developed, not further to the north.
I guess I'm afraid that we're gonna,
Could you speak up? Brian?
yeah, I'm afraid that we're going to be here for another year and a half. And I don't say that lightly because we've been through projects that have been a year and a half. So I want to be clear, at least what, I can only speak for me, what I'm looking for. And it revolves around two things. One is, I would not support any more density on this project than could be built if everything was torn down and the project stayed within the code as a maximum bulk. And that would be mitigated, that maximum would be mitigated by the fact that we would never support 6 stories on Norwich across from those apartment buildings. So the maximum is not 6 stories over the whole site because we wouldn't approve that. We would approve something less than that. I can't be more specific than that, but so for me, I would never approve on this site anything more than could be built within the height limit as modified, meaning less than that in certain places by this board as a baseline. And I mean that to the square inch. And so that's one. Number two, Alhambra Court. Alhambra Court buildings have no significance whatsoever. The buildings themselves are very vernacular plain. They're nothing special. They're not to be seen, in my mind, as jewels. They're about scale and urban planning and space, and they're not about the actual brick in the wall. And so for me, there needs to be some way to respect that existing fabric. And right now, what I see here is a spite building. We couldn't get these other buildings, so we left them there and we built this enormous thing around it. This enormous thing around it does not incorporate the Alhambra Court in its design, really. I don't want Alhambra Court to look like the thing that got left over because the owner was stubborn. I would like the Alhambra Court to be somehow more part of the design. And that may mean that it needs to be nipped and tucked. It may need to have some intersection occur through it. I don't know. I'm not going to design it. But I don't think the actual perfect fabric of the building is so important, but I think the scale and presence is important. So for me, I'd like to see more integration. I'd like to not be looking at the big mass and the little building anymore. I'd like to see something that tries to make a unified project, not a project of contrasts. Uh, and, and so that's my second thing. So first, it's a density that's no more than would be allowable if you scorched earth and got through our approval process, which would only lessen that density some, and use that as a baseline for the new project. And then one where Alhambra Court is truly, if we're going to then consider variances, to go taller, and that Alhambra Court is somehow integral and part of the design. So that's what and I'd really rather not see anything again until you do those things.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with all of that. So I think the thing to be mindful of, and Bhakti, you were here before us years ago, is while the zoning code allows 72 feet height across that site, that does not mean we are obliged to care. The purview of the board is written into the zoning code is that we are here to preserve, protect, and enhance the urban environment. And the intent of that is it was written in the zoning code.
Excuse me, though, the design guidelines also support the 72 feet. That's in the design guidelines as well.
I don't care. The point is the board exists as a fine tool because the guidelines and the zoning code are blunt instruments. And the reason we have purview over form and appearance and graphics and signage currently is because we can make qualitative judgments about what works for the neighborhood. So even though the zoning code says 72 feet across the side is acceptable, as Bhakti knows from the last time several years ago, and what Frank said, doesn't mean we have to accept 72 feet across the site. And we could say, hey, look, you got Norwich to the north. That's a nice 4-story building north of Norwich. Even though the code allows you 72 feet by rights, we expect to see a step down to the north to acknowledge the scale of the neighborhood and how it fits. I mean, I think the problem here is, I think Frank's right. I think if you're going to try and make a case that this is acceptable bulk, I think you need to show your map. Show us, you came before us a number of months ago with, 72 foot scheme across both sites. Presumably, it had a certain amount of square footage, a certain amount of units, a certain amount of parking. Show us the map, show us the units, show us the square footage. And then when you come back with something that tries to kind of, step the mass, put the bulk to the south and preserve some of the contributing buildings, show us that the math works in a way that we think is reasonable. I mean, I think the other point, as Frank said, they're decent buildings. I used to live around the corner. I like walking by them. They're not precious. This does not enhance the urban environment. To lop off half of Alhambra Court and, put this big brown mass on the backside that sort of slithers north towards Norwich, it preserves individual buildings, but it doesn't enhance the neighborhood. And I think at the end of the day, I am more interested in a scheme that preserves the overall coherence of the neighborhood, which is, I think, a question of mass and bulk as CVS, fine, but as you kind of move north towards Norwich, you're starting to get to, 2-story residential neighborhoods, and you got to find a way to more thoughtfully and effectively step back and address. I mean, I'm looking out the window and the first section of the Lebec, that's the 15-story thing. And, you think of that on that site, it's hard to see how there's a convincing argument that that is good urban design. Like, I'm struggling to understand how you could put that much height and bulk on the site and get something that enhances the urban neighborhood. And I think Doreen had a point that the university was thoughtful when they thought about the appropriate heights of buildings across High Street. The 20-story towers are deeper into the site. And as they come out to meet the edge of the city, they limited themselves to 6 or 7 stories because they thought that was the scale that made sense. And the way they provided relief was by putting space between the buildings so that they could, kind of maintain a certain level of relief and scale.
I'll say I'm new to the board, but I've sat on that side. There's many times that I'll joke and say I didn't want to say Frank was right, but in this one, I can't get over the 6-story part and how it relates. That I can't even start to focus on the height of the building at Lane and High, because that building with the 6 stories and over and this tunnel that goes underneath, it just seems so built around and connected, and you're disconnected from everything else that's going on, that's so distracting to me. And I don't know that the answers, I don't know if it means you end cap it if we said, hey, we're doing that so it feels like it's a U shape, so there's not this big courtyard that has no sun that comes in it and it moves from grass to concrete. I'll agree with that. I don't know the answer, but I do know that I can't even get past that point in looking at the first time before concentrating on the height.
And I think that's why at every meeting I have asked for the list of the variances so that we can understand the magnitude of what you're proposing. And if in fact, that supports what Frank and Keone are talking about in terms of, but we don't even know if how much this exceeds what the guidelines call for in terms of the density, the square footage, the number of parking spaces. We have no idea what you're proposing.
Can I respond to that?
Certainly.
No,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, we do have for this scheme, we do have the variances calculated, so we could address that if you wanted. Eric can speak to that if you want the details.
I think everybody wants to know, are you within, in terms of Frank's point, are you just moving everything over to the southern end of the site? What are you proposing?
Yeah, I mean, he can speak to the details, but we could go back to the scheme 1, like Frank was suggesting, which was exactly that. It was everything clean slate and within all zoning requirements. So within the height requirement, no variances for parking, really no variances at all. The first scheme that we presented to you. So we could go back if that's sort of being used as a base of the density that could be permitted on the site by moving things around. I understand that.
The maximum density.
The maximum density. I understand.
We didn't approve what you were
No,
talking.
I understand. I'm just referencing what you said, using that as a baseline sort of to say that this cannot exceed that, right? That's what you were trying to say to some extent. That scheme, we were told that you're not trying hard enough because it was meeting all zoning requirements. So we've been pushing density to the south because of it since then, and that has led to this scheme. So quite frankly, we're a little bit confused because we have only gone to this density on the south because of everything that we've heard, and trying to keep as much of the existing fabric towards North and High Street as possible. So,
But maybe what that's saying, sorry to interrupt, is that density is inappropriate for that site, and maybe the combination of those two sites isn't the correct way to proceed.
Yeah, but my perception is the density is greater.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
Rachel said.
well, what is, how many parking spots, how many beds,
Yeah.
how much square foot of retail, and what are we at now?
Hi, my name's Eric Zarban. I'm Michael Shane's associate zoning attorney. Mr. Pasquale, to answer your questions directly, the actual number with this scheme or any scheme we're going to have, the actual number, quantity of variances are going to be very small. What we have here are two area variances and one use variance. And the reason for that is that this is in the regional commercial sub area. So, this is the design for the most intense density or development, in the whole university district area. So the only variances we're looking at here are the height and then the parking. There's no variances for floor area overlay or floor area ratios, setbacks, landscaping, all that stuff. It's not gonna be applicable, because we're in the regional commercial.
I guess I'm always blunt, that's one thing, but we're missing the point. The point is, on that plan, how many beds does that allow you to get, how much retail, how much parking, and what does this plan? If this is 900, I'm making up, if this is 900 beds and the maximum there was 600, that's where Frank's point is.
Yeah.
We're not starting from an even scale, right? Where if that max plan showed 600 beds, there should be no more than 600 beds on this plan. We agree with moving them, but that's what we're trying to compare.
Yeah, does that mean that, because we were also not asking for, a variance for parking, but we were able to do a lot more efficient parking because we had underground for the entire site. So moving it, for the most part, we will be needing a parking variance. So does that have to match as well?
We don't fight about parking variances.
Okay.
But
So it's more
I
to
mean,
do with
how
the
much,
density
how much
and the
retail was there
residential.
before? How much is there now? How many beds was there before?
And that-
Leasable square foot, you didn't have to put in beds.
Well, the retail's gonna go down, because there's only so much ground floor space, but the residential component, we'd at least like to know that. It's Play-Doh, guys, it's Play-Doh,
Yeah,
You squeeze
I
it.
mean, we could pull up that first and see what that number was.
Yeah, well,
Right now, we don't have that comparison.
But like, how many beds is this?
732.
How many was the other one before?
I mean, to tell you the truth, that was 6, 7 months ago. We essentially crumpled up and threw that plan in the trash based on the feedback we heard from the board. So I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
But you guys know, I mean, you did it before, but you know how many beds it was. This is
We've
700.
also had probably 8
Yeah,
iterations.
I know that's it now, but that's getting to the point, is understanding where that allowed us to be and where we.
And I guess where I would be coming from is what you've proven to me is it's inappropriate to take the density of both sites and put it on one site because it creates a
Lopsided.
a massing that just doesn't work.
yeah, but I'm guessing that this is more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, yeah.
I agree,
So
but
I'd like
let's
to see
the
that,
number.
yeah, right, I agree. Yeah.
Right, and then, if you go to the alley view, the design guidelines call for step down of the building to the alley side. Anything over 3 stories, has to be stepped back, so that really doesn't address that either. Which of course would adjust the amount of buildable area as well.
I believe is that a zoning requirement or is that a guideline?
That was a guideline, that's not a zoning requirement.
Any other board comments?
Hopefully so.
Well, in terms of the agenda, that was the last item, so unless the applicant has any other questions for the board, I think we can adjourn the meeting. You guys feel okay? Or, well, clear from what the plans were? Do you want to call it, Carrie? It is 7:01.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
You have to finish the review.
I think you can just say 7:01 meeting.
7:01, no, we're
Meeting
done.
adjourned, okay. You can either say 7:02 if you like.
Thank you. Thank you.
Frank, from.
Yeah.